Picture this: a nation where molasses once moved faster than traffic, where presidents kept grizzly bears as lawn ornaments, and where an entire war was fought over a single pig. From sea to shining sea, this land harbors secrets so strange they'd make fiction writers weep with envy. We're talking about a place where cats were literally dropped from the sky to save an ecosystem, where pickle bouncing became a legal requirement. But these aren't tall tales spun around campfires or urban legends passed down through generations. These are documented, verified, jaw-dropping facts that reveal America's hidden weirdness in all its glory. So buckle up for a wild ride through the strangest corners of American history, culture, and geography. Trust us, reality is far weirder than anything you could imagine. 1. The Great Molasses Flood, when sweetness turned deadly. Imagine strolling through Boston's North End on a crisp January afternoon in 1919, minding your own business, maybe thinking about lunch, when suddenly the ground begins to rumble beneath your feet. But this isn't an earthquake. Oh no, this is something far more bizarre. A massive steel tank, towering 50 feet high and packed with 2.3 million gallons of molasses, has just exploded with the force of a bomb. The resulting wave of sticky brown syrup surges through the streets at a terrifying 35 miles per hour, creating a tsunami of sweetness that proves anything but sweet. This wasn't some gentle flow you could casually step aside from. This was a 15-foot-tall wall of death moving faster than most people could sprint. Picture trying to outrun a wave of liquid that's thicker than honey and taller than a house. 21 souls lost their lives that day, crushed beneath the weight of what should have been someone's breakfast topping. The cleanup took weeks, and locals claimed you could smell molasses in the area for decades afterward. It was the day Boston learned that even the sweetest things in life can turn deadly without warning. 2. The Kentucky Meat Shower, when the sky rained dinner. March 3, 1876, started like any other ordinary day in Bath County, Kentucky. Mrs. Crouch was outside making soap, probably thinking about what to prepare for dinner, when the sky decided to solve her meal problem in the most horrifying way imaginable. Without any warning whatsoever, chunks of red meat began falling from the heavens like some twisted biblical plague. These weren't tiny scraps either. Some pieces measured a hefty 4 inches by 4 inches, enough to make a decent steak if you could somehow get past the whole falling from the sky thing. The mysterious meat shower covered an area of 4,500 square yards, turning the peaceful countryside into what looked like a butcher's explosion. Scientists rushed to the scene, analyzing specimens and proposing theories ranging from vulture vomit to unknown atmospheric phenomena. But to this day, nobody can definitively explain why Kentucky briefly experienced dinner falling from above. Most locals probably lost their appetite for outdoor dining permanently. Imagine trying to explain to your neighbors that your property was suddenly covered in mystery meat from the clouds. It's the kind of story that makes you wonder what else might be lurking in America's skies. 3. The War of Jenkins' Ear, when body parts started international conflicts. Meet Captain Robert Jenkins, a British merchant sailor who probably thought the worst part of his job was dealing with pirates and storms. He was catastrophically wrong. In April 1731, Spanish Coast Guards boarded his ship and, in a moment of diplomatic brilliance, decided to slice off his ear as a warning about trading in their waters. Most people would consider losing an ear a deeply personal matter and move on with their lives. But Jenkins had bigger plans. He preserved his severed ear in alcohol like some macabre souvenir, and carried it around for 7 long years. When tensions between Britain and Spain reached a boiling point in 1738, Jenkins pulled out his pickled ear and presented it to Parliament like evidence in a cosmic court case. His gruesome show and tell helped convince Britain to declare war on Spain, launching a 9-year conflict that spread across the Caribbean and cost thousands of lives. One man's ear became the catalyst for international warfare, proving that sometimes the smallest body parts can have the biggest consequences in human history. 4. Operation Cat Drop, when cats became paratroopers. The 1950s were supposedly simpler times when the World Health Organization thought they could solve malaria in Borneo with a straightforward plan: spray DDT everywhere to kill mosquitoes. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. The DDT didn't just kill mosquitoes. It wiped out cats, which led to an explosion of rats, which threatened to destroy crops and spread disease. Faced with an ecological disaster of their own making, officials came up with a solution so absurd it sounds like a cartoon plot. Operation Cat Drop. They literally parachuted cats in wooden crates across the Sarawak region, turning domestic felines into tiny furry paratroopers. Picture hundreds of confused cats floating down from the sky in what must have been the most bizarre military operation in human history. The cats, probably suffering from serious motion sickness and existential confusion, somehow managed to restore the natural balance. It was a reminder that nature's ecosystem is more delicate than a house of cards, and sometimes fixing human mistakes requires equally ridiculous human solutions. 5. The Battle of Los Angeles. When America fought UFOs, sort of, February 25th, 1942, was supposed to be a quiet night in the City of Angels. But someone forgot to tell that to the military. Just months after Pearl Harbor, with nerves stretched tighter than piano wire, air raid sirens began wailing across Los Angeles at 2:25 a.m. What happened next turned the peaceful city into a war zone, fighting an enemy that didn't actually exist. For over an hour, anti-aircraft batteries unleashed absolute hell on the sky, firing 1,400 shells at mysterious objects that may or may not have been there. Searchlights crisscrossed the darkness like a deadly light show, while explosions lit up the night like a twisted fireworks display. 5 people died in the chaos, not from enemy fire, but from heart attacks and car crashes caused by the sheer pandemonium. The military claimed they were shooting at Japanese aircraft, but no wreckage was ever found. The truth was far more embarrassing. America's military had just spent millions of dollars and caused 5 deaths fighting weather balloons and war nerves. It was the night Los Angeles declared war on its own imagination. 6. Lincoln's secret colonization plan. The other side of the Great Emancipator. Everyone knows Abraham Lincoln as the Great Emancipator, the man who freed the slaves and preserved the Union. But here's the plot twist that doesn't make it into most history textbooks. Lincoln also spent considerable time planning to ship freed slaves out of America entirely. While publicly championing emancipation, he was privately working on colonization schemes that would relocate Black Americans to Central America, the Caribbean, or Liberia. Lincoln genuinely believed that whites and blacks could never coexist peacefully in America. So his solution was geographical separation. He even met with black leaders to pitch his colonization ideas, though they largely and rightfully rejected them. The irony is staggering. The man we celebrate for freeing the slaves also wanted to export them from the country. It's a reminder that even our greatest heroes were products of their time, harboring contradictions that would make modern Americans deeply uncomfortable. Lincoln's legacy as the Great Emancipator remains intact, but perhaps we should add Great Colonizer to his list of titles, if only to remember that history is far more complex than our textbooks suggest. 7. The Pig War, when one dead pig nearly started World War III. June 15, 1859, began as a perfectly typical day on San Juan Island, until American farmer Lyman Cutlar discovered a pig rooting through his potato garden. This wasn't just any pig. It belonged to the Hudson's Bay Company, and it was enthusiastically eating his crops. In a moment of agricultural rage, Cutlar shot the pig dead, probably thinking he'd solved a simple property dispute. He was catastrophically wrong. The pig's death triggered an international incident that brought Britain and America to the brink of war for 13 long years. Both nations claimed the San Juan Islands, and the pig shooting became the spark that could have ignited a global conflict. British and American forces rushed to the scene, setting up camps and pointing cannons at each other over a dead pig. For more than a decade, Two of the world's great powers maintained a military standoff because one farmer couldn't tolerate porcine trespassing. Cooler heads eventually prevailed, and the war ended without a single human casualty. The only victim was one unfortunate pig who just wanted some potatoes. It remains the only war in history where the death toll was 100% pork. 8. The XYZ affair, when diplomacy met extortion. Picture 3 American diplomats arriving in Paris in 1797, expecting normal diplomatic negotiations with France. Instead, they found themselves in what felt like a sophisticated shakedown operation worthy of organized crime. French Foreign Minister Talleyrand didn't meet with them directly. Instead, he sent 3 mysterious agents known only as X, Y, and Z, like characters from a spy novel who'd forgotten their real names. These agents had a beautifully simple message: pay up or shut up. They demanded a $250,000 bribe for Talleyrand, a $12 million loan to France, and a public apology from President John Adams before any negotiations could even begin. The Americans were absolutely stunned. This wasn't diplomacy. This was extortion with a French accent. When news of the XYZ affair reached America, the public exploded with rage. Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute, became the rallying cry. The incident sparked an undeclared naval war between France and America that lasted 2 years. It proved that sometimes international relations can feel more like organized crime, and that even founding-era America wouldn't tolerate being treated like a protection racket's next victim. 9. Jefferson's White House Zoo, when presidents kept grizzly bears as pets. Thomas Jefferson was a man of many interests: architecture, wine, philosophy, and, apparently, extremely dangerous pets. In 1807, the 3rd president of the United States decided that the White House needed some wildlife, so he installed 2 grizzly bear cubs in cages on the front lawn. Imagine being a dinner guest and having to walk past actual grizzly bears to reach the front door. These weren't stuffed animals or decorative statues. These were real, living grizzly bears that could maul visitors with the same ease they might maul salmon in the wild. Jefferson kept them for 2 months, probably until someone with common sense pointed out that having man-eating predators as lawn ornaments might send the wrong message to foreign dignitaries. The bears were eventually shipped to Philadelphia, where they presumably lived out their days wondering why they'd been evicted from the most powerful address in America. It was peak Jefferson, intellectually curious, slightly eccentric, and completely oblivious to normal safety concerns. Modern Secret Service agents probably break into cold sweats just thinking about it. Imagine trying to secure a building when the biggest threat to visitors might be the president's pet bears. 10. FDR's fatal fear of Friday the 13th. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the man who led America through the Great Depression and World War II, had one weakness that would seem comical if it weren't so extreme. He was absolutely terrified of the number 13. This wasn't a mild superstition or casual concern. This was full-blown triskaidekaphobia that controlled his schedule and major decisions. FDR refused to travel on the 13th of any month, wouldn't host dinners with 13 guests, and avoided conducting any important business on Friday the 13th. If he absolutely had to be somewhere on the 13th, he would leave at 11:50 p.m. on the 12th or wait until after midnight on the 14th. His staff had to constantly rearrange his calendar to accommodate this fear, probably wondering if they were working for the president or a prisoner of superstition. The cosmic irony is almost too perfect. Roosevelt died on April 12, 1945, the day before Friday the 13th. It's as if fate was playing the ultimate practical joke on a man who spent his entire life trying to avoid that particular combination of day and date. The leader who told America, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," was secretly controlled by his own irrational terror of numbers and calendar dates. 11. John Quincy Adams' nude swimming diplomacy. Every morning at 5 a.m., while most of Washington, D.C. slept peacefully in their beds, President John Quincy Adams would strip completely naked and dive into the Potomac River for his daily swim. This wasn't some private, secluded spot hidden from public view. This was right there in the nation's capital, where anyone could witness the leader of the free world in his birthday suit. Adams believed swimming was essential for his health, and apparently clothing was just an unnecessary hindrance to proper aquatic exercise. One enterprising reporter named Anne Royal discovered his routine and saw a golden opportunity. When Adams refused to grant her an interview through normal channels, she waited by the riverbank, sat on his clothes, and refused to move until he answered her questions. Picture the scene. The President of the United States, treading water naked, trying to negotiate with a fully clothed journalist who was essentially holding his wardrobe hostage. Adams eventually gave in and conducted what might be the most awkward presidential interview in American history. It was the ultimate power move, proving that sometimes the best way to corner a politician is when they literally have nowhere to hide. 12. Benjamin Franklin's alphabet surgery. Benjamin Franklin wasn't content with inventing bifocals, discovering electricity, and helping birth a nation. He also wanted to perform major surgery on the English language itself. In 1768, the ever-ambitious polymath decided that the alphabet was bloated and inefficient, containing 6 letters that served absolutely no real purpose: C, J, Q, W, X, and Y. Franklin's logic was actually pretty sound. Why have a C when K and S could do the job perfectly well? Why keep Q when KW worked just fine? His reformed alphabet would make spelling easier and more phonetic, eliminating the confusion that still tortures English learners today. He was so serious about this linguistic revolution that he created new letters to replace sounds that weren't properly represented and started writing some of his correspondence in his new alphabet, probably confusing the hell out of his recipients. Imagine if he'd succeeded. We might be reading American history about Queen Elizabeth and drinking coffee while eating sandwiches. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your view of English spelling, his alphabet reform never catched on with the public. Franklin's linguistic ambitions died, leaving us stuck with an alphabet that still makes foreigners weep when trying to learn English pronunciation. 13. George Washington's liquid legacy. After 8 exhausting years of being president, George Washington was probably ready for a stiff drink. Lucky for him, he had his own distillery to supply it. In 1797, the father of our country became the father of American whiskey production, operating the largest distillery in the entire nation from his Mount Vernon estate. This wasn't some small hobby operation or weekend project. Washington's distillery produced 11,000 gallons of whiskey annually by 1799, making him one of the biggest liquor magnates in America. The man who couldn't tell a lie was apparently perfectly fine with getting people drunk for profit. His whiskey was renowned for its quality, and customers came from miles around to sample the president's personal brew. Washington employed both enslaved workers and paid Scottish immigrants who brought their centuries-old distilling expertise to Virginia. The operation made him serious money, about $7,500 annually, which was an absolute fortune in those days. So the next time someone talks about the dignity and sobriety of the Founding Fathers, remember that the most revered among them spent his retirement years running what was essentially an 18th century version of a craft brewery empire. Washington proved you could be both a founding father and a founding distiller. 14. Bush Sr.'s diplomatic disaster. State dinners are supposed to showcase American diplomacy at its finest. Elegant affairs where world leaders bond over exquisite cuisine and refined conversation. January 8th, 1992 was supposed to be one of those magical nights, with President George H.W. Bush dining with Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa in Tokyo. Instead, it became one of the most mortifying moments in diplomatic history. Midway through the dinner, Bush suddenly felt violently ill. In front of rolling cameras, distinguished dignitaries, and millions of viewers worldwide, the President of the United States proceeded to vomit directly onto the Japanese Prime Minister, then fainted and collapsed onto the floor. The entire room froze in horrified silence as Secret Service agents rushed to help their unconscious leader. while the Prime Minister sat there covered in presidential vomit, probably wondering if this was some new form of American diplomatic protocol. Bush later claimed he had the flu, but the damage was done. The incident was broadcast globally, creating awkward headlines and diplomatic embarrassment that lasted for months. The Japanese, being incredibly polite, handled the situation with remarkable grace. But imagine being Miyazawa. One moment you're making polite small talk about trade relations, the next you're covered in presidential stomach contents. It proved that even the most powerful person in the world isn't immune to basic human biology, betraying them at the worst possible moment. 15. The Great Presidential Beard Drought. Take a close look at any recent presidential photo, and you'll notice something distinctly missing: facial hair. America hasn't had a bearded president since William Howard Taft left office in 1913, creating what historians call the beard gap, a 110-plus year period where clean-shaven has been the mandatory presidential look. This wasn't always the case. The late 1800s were the absolute golden age of presidential facial hair. Abraham Lincoln's iconic beard helped define his entire image, while Benjamin Harrison sported a magnificent full beard that made him look like a biblical patriarch with political ambitions. Rutherford B. Hayes had facial hair so impressive it practically had its own political platform. But sometime in the early 20th century, beards became associated with radicalism, foreignness, or questionable hygiene. Presidential candidates learned that facial hair was political suicide. Voters apparently preferred their leaders clean-shaven and trustworthy-looking. The trend has held firm for over a century, despite changing fashion trends in the general population. It's gotten so ridiculous that political consultants probably have nightmares about their candidates growing so much as a goatee. In modern America, you can be president or you can have a beard, but apparently you can't be both. The facial hair gap continues, making America the land of the free and home of the perpetually clean-shaven commander-in-chief. 16. The high school student who redesigned America. In 1958, 17-year-old Robert Heft was just another high school student in Lancaster, Ohio, trying to complete a boring history assignment. His teacher asked the class to design something patriotic, so Heft decided to create a new American flag with 50 stars to accommodate the potential statehood of Alaska and Hawaii. He spent countless hours arranging the stars in a perfect pattern, sewing the flag by hand with the dedication of someone who had no idea he was making history. When he turned in his project, his teacher was less than impressed, giving him a B- grade and commenting that the design lacked creativity. Most students would have shrugged, complained to their friends, and moved on with their lives. But Heft had bigger plans. He sent his flag design to his congressman, who forwarded it to the White House. When Alaska and Hawaii officially became states, Congress needed a new flag design fast. Out of over 1,500 submissions from across the country, they chose Heft's high school project. Suddenly, the teenager who couldn't get an A in history class had designed the official flag of the United States. His teacher, probably feeling pretty foolish, eventually changed his grade to an A. Heft's flag has flown over America for more than 60 years, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places, like a teenager's homework assignment that almost got a failing grade. 17. The Logan Act, America's most ignored law. In 1799, Congress passed one of the most bizarrely specific laws in American history, the Logan Act, which makes it illegal for private citizens to conduct unauthorized diplomatic negotiations with foreign governments. The law was named after George Logan, a Pennsylvania Quaker who took it upon himself to travel to France in 1798 and negotiate peace during a particularly tense period in Franco-American relations. Logan wasn't a diplomat, ambassador, or government official. He was just a concerned citizen who thought he could smooth things over with the French through the power of reasonable conversation. His unauthorized peace mission actually worked, helping to ease tensions between the two nations. But it absolutely infuriated President John Adams and Congress, who felt that private citizens had no business conducting foreign policy without permission. Here's the absolutely incredible kicker. In over 220 years, only 2 people have ever been indicted under the Logan Act, and no one has ever been convicted. It's become the most famous law that nobody enforces, despite being violated regularly by former presidents, business leaders, and activists who travel abroad and discuss policy with foreign officials. The Logan Act remains on the books like a legislative fossil, a reminder of a time when Congress thought they could control American citizens' conversations with foreigners through criminal law. 18. The Pringles inventor's final snack. Frederick Bauer was a man who truly understood the beauty of functional design. As the inventor of the Pringles can, that perfect cylindrical container that keeps chips fresh and unbroken, he spent his entire career thinking about innovative packaging solutions. So when it came time to plan his own final packaging, Bauer had a uniquely personal request that would have made his marketing department weep with joy. In 2008, the 89-year-old Bauer died in Cincinnati, Ohio, but not before making one of the most unusual burial requests in human history. He wanted to be cremated and buried in a Pringles can. His family honored his wishes, though they apparently had some spirited debate about which flavor can to use. They ultimately chose original, perhaps feeling that the inventor deserved the classic experience rather than some newfangled flavor variant. Picture the funeral home staff trying to explain this request to their suppliers, or the cemetery workers wondering why they were burying what looked like a giant snack container with unusual sentimental value. Bauer's final resting place proves that sometimes your greatest professional achievement can become your eternal home. It's the ultimate product placement, a marketing executive's dream, and a mortician's most memorable challenge. Somewhere, Bauer is probably enjoying the knowledge that he literally took his life's work with him to the grave. 19. Idaho's anti-cannibalism crusade. Most states operate under the reasonable assumption that not eating other people is just common sense that doesn't need to be written into law. Idaho thought differently. In 1990, the Gem State became the only state in America to explicitly criminalize cannibalism, apparently deciding that their legal code had a serious man-eating loophole that desperately needed closing. Idaho Code Section 18 to 5003 defines cannibalism as willfully ingesting the flesh or blood of a human being. It makes it punishable by up to 14 years in prison. The law is surprisingly thoughtful, including exceptions for medical procedures, self-defense, and most interestingly, survival situations. If you're trapped in the wilderness and facing starvation, Idaho's lawmakers apparently understood that desperate times might call for desperate culinary measures. The law raises some obvious questions. What exactly prompted Idaho to decide this legislation was necessary? Was there a concerning rash of cannibalism that other states somehow missed? Were Idaho legislators just really thorough planners who wanted to cover all their legal bases? The truth is probably more mundane, likely a legislative response to some specific case that made lawmakers realize their criminal code had an embarrassing gap. Still, it means Idaho is the only state where you can be absolutely certain that eating your neighbor is definitely, explicitly, and thoroughly illegal under state law. 20. Hawaii's billboard-free paradise. Since 1927, Hawaii has maintained one of the most successful advertising bans in American history. Absolutely no billboards allowed anywhere in the state. While the mainland is perpetually cluttered with giant signs screaming about fast food, car insurance, and personal injury lawyers, Hawaii decided that natural beauty shouldn't have to compete with commercial messaging for visual attention. The ban was part of the state's ambitious urban beautification initiative, though it was probably motivated by the simple realization that when you live in actual paradise, the last thing you want is a massive McDonald's sign blocking your view of an active volcano. Hawaii joins only 3 other states, Alaska, Maine, and Vermont, in completely prohibiting billboards, creating some of the most visually clean highways in America. Businesses initially fought the ban tooth and nail, arguing it violated their free speech rights and hurt commerce. But Hawaii held firm, and the result is absolutely stunning. Driving through the islands feels like traveling through an unspoiled landscape rather than navigating a commercial gauntlet designed to assault your eyeballs with advertising. Tourists consistently rank Hawaii's scenic beauty as a major attraction, not realizing that part of what they're enjoying is the conspicuous absence of visual pollution. It's proof that sometimes the most effective marketing strategy is not marketing at all, letting natural beauty speak for itself without commercial interference. 21. Connecticut's Bouncing Pickle Law. In 1948, Connecticut lawmakers faced a crisis that most legislatures never have to consider. How do you legally define a pickle? The question arose after two unscrupulous pickle packers in Hartford tried to sell pickles that were deemed unfit for human consumption by vigilant state inspectors. But what exactly made a pickle unfit for human consumption? Connecticut's Food and Drug Commissioner, Frederick Holcomb, came up with a solution that sounds like something from a Marx Brothers comedy sketch, the official bounce test. According to Holcomb's scientific reasoning, a properly processed pickle should be firm enough to bounce when dropped from a height of 1 foot. A mushy, overprocessed pickle would just splat on the ground like a disappointed vegetable pancake. The bounce test became official Connecticut law, meaning that pickle vendors can literally be prosecuted if their products fail to achieve proper bounciness standards. State inspectors actually carry out this test to this day, dropping pickles onto hard surfaces to determine their legal status. It's probably the only law in America where proper food preparation is determined by athletic ability. The next time you're eating a Connecticut pickle, take a moment to appreciate that it passed a physical fitness test that would make a basketball jealous. Only in America could produce quality be measured by how well your vegetables can perform basic gymnastic movements. 22. Alaska's circular bar logic. Alaska has created one of the most paradoxical laws in American jurisprudence. It's illegal for intoxicated people to enter establishments where alcohol is sold. Think about this for a moment. The law essentially makes it illegal for drunk people to go into bars, which creates a fascinating philosophical catch. 22 for anyone who's already had a few drinks. The law applies to both patrons and the bartenders who serve them, meaning you can theoretically be arrested for being drunk in a place specifically designed for getting drunk. It's like making it illegal to be wet at a swimming pool, tired at a hotel, or hungry at a restaurant. The practical enforcement of this law must create some absolutely surreal situations. Imagine a police officer having to determine whether someone is too drunk to legally enter a bar, or bartenders having to turn away customers who might actually be their most reliable clientele. The law was probably intended to prevent public drunkenness and disorderly conduct, but its wording creates an almost philosophical problem worthy of ancient Greek paradoxes. How drunk is too drunk? Who makes that determination? What if you become intoxicated after you're already inside the bar? Do you have to leave immediately? And if so, can you come back in later? Alaska's legislators accidentally created a legal pretzel that would challenge even sober legal scholars to unravel. Huson harom, Massachusetts Plitritik Don Singbon. In 1917, as America entered World War I, patriotic fervor reached such intense heights that Massachusetts lawmakers decided even dancing could be unpatriotic if done incorrectly. The state passed a law specifically prohibiting dancing to the Star-Spangled Banner, apparently deeply concerned that people were treating the national anthem like a dance tune rather than a sacred hymn requiring solemn respect. The law reflected the almost militant nationalism of the World War I era, when anything that seemed to diminish American symbols was considered borderline treasonous. Dancing to the national anthem was seen as frivolous and disrespectful, like turning a church service into a party. The legislation was probably prompted by specific incidents of overly enthusiastic patriots who thought the best way to honor America was to waltz energetically to its national song. Modern constitutional law makes this statute completely unenforceable. The First Amendment protects even offensive forms of expression, including dancing enthusiastically to the national anthem. But the law remains on the books as a fascinating reminder of how wartime hysteria can lead to absolutely absurd legislation. Today, If you want to do the twist to the Star-Spangled Banner in Massachusetts, you're legally free to do so, though you might want to carefully check the crowd's mood first. Sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is resist the urge to criminalize every behavior that happens to annoy you. 24. Kentucky's anti-dueling oath. Since 1848, anyone taking public office in Kentucky must swear a very specific and unusual oath that they have never fought a duel with deadly weapons. This requirement exists because dueling was such a serious problem in 19th century Kentucky that lawmakers felt compelled to bar duelists from public service entirely. Dueling was essentially the Instagram of the 1800s, a way for gentlemen to publicly prove their honor and courage, usually over perceived slights that today would barely merit an eye roll or angry tweet. Kentucky's political and social elite regularly settled disputes with pistols at dawn, creating a violent culture where elected officials might literally kill their political opponents before elections even took place. The anti-dueling oath was meant to keep hot-headed gunslingers out of government, though it's unclear how effective it actually was. After all, people willing to risk death over matters of honor might not be particularly deterred by a mere oath. The requirement remains in effect today, meaning every Kentucky politician must solemnly swear they've never participated in formal combat with deadly weapons. It's probably the easiest oath for modern politicians to take, though it does make you wonder about the occasional candidate who might hesitate just a moment before signing. In an era of Twitter feuds and cable news debates, the anti-dueling oath seems charmingly quaint, a reminder of when political disputes were settled with actual weapons rather than 24-hour news cycles and social media flame wars. 25. Wisconsin's cheese quality control. Wisconsin takes its hard-earned reputation as America's dairyland so seriously that state law requires all cheese and butter produced within its borders to be highly pleasing to consumers. This isn't just marketing language or corporate buzzwords. This is actual legal terminology that appears in Wisconsin's official food quality statutes with the force of law behind it. But how exactly do you legally define highly pleasing in a courtroom? Wisconsin employs professional cheese graders who evaluate dairy products based on flavor, texture, appearance, and aroma. These dairy critics have the legal power to reject products that don't meet the state's official pleasing standards. The law reflects Wisconsin's fierce pride in dairy excellence and its determination to maintain quality standards that justify the state's incredibly cheesy reputation. Wisconsin produces more cheese than any other state, over 3.5 billion pounds annually, so maintaining the highly pleasing standard affects a significant portion of America's entire cheese supply. It's probably the only law in America where consumer satisfaction is a legal requirement rather than just a hopeful business goal. Imagine if other states adopted similar standards. California wine must be reasonably sophisticated. Idaho potatoes must be adequately starchy, or Vermont maple syrup must be sufficiently quaint. Wisconsin's cheese law proves that sometimes state pride can literally become state law, with legal consequences for anyone whose dairy products fail to achieve adequate pleasingness. 26. Utah's missile-free bus terminals. Utah legislators apparently spent considerable time worrying about people hurling projectiles into bus terminals because they created a specific felony law addressing this very peculiar scenario. Under Utah law, throwing or launching missiles into bus terminals is a serious crime, though the statute thoughtfully exempts appointed officers of the peace or commercial security personnel. The law raises immediate questions about what exactly constitutes a missile in this legal context. Are we talking about actual military weapons? Or does this include aggressively throwing a ham sandwich at someone in a Greyhound station? The legal definition of missile could range from intercontinental ballistic weapons to poorly aimed luggage. The exemption for peace officers and security personnel suggests that sometimes professional missile hurling into bus terminals might be necessary for public safety, which creates even more fascinating questions. Under what circumstances would a police officer need to launch projectiles in a transportation hub? Are security guards authorized to operate anti-aircraft batteries in case of bus terminal emergencies? Utah's lawmakers were probably trying to address vandalism or terrorism concerns. But the specific wording creates a law that sounds like it was written by someone who watched too many action movies and took detailed notes. It's legislation that makes you wonder whether Utah's bus terminals have experienced missile attacks that other states have somehow miraculously avoided. 27. Minnesota's slippery animal ban. In 1971, Minnesota decided that certain forms of animal entertainment had gotten completely out of hand, specifically banning greased pig contests and turkey scrambles. These events, popular at county fairs and community festivals, involve coating innocent animals with oil or grease and releasing them for people to catch. It was basically turning livestock into living, breathing, slip-and-slide obstacles for human amusement. The ban was probably motivated by animal welfare concerns, though it's also entirely possible that lawmakers got tired of explaining to visiting dignitaries why their state's idea of fun involved chasing lubricated farm animals around a muddy field. Greased pig contests were particularly popular because pigs are naturally difficult to catch even when completely dry. Adding oil to the equation turned them into nearly impossible-to-grab escape artists. Turkey scrambles were equally chaotic, with participants desperately trying to catch birds that were both naturally quick and artificially slippery. The events often resulted in more human injuries than animal captures, as people slipped, slid, and crashed spectacularly into each other while pursuing evasive poultry. Minnesota's ban reflects changing attitudes toward animal treatment and public safety, though it probably disappointed county fair organizers who had to find entirely new ways to entertain crowds. The law ensures that Minnesota's animals can maintain their dignity without being turned into living game pieces covered in cooking oil. 28. Arkansas's Pronunciation Police. Arkansas takes the pronunciation of its name so seriously that it's actually written into official state law. Visitors and residents alike are legally required to pronounce Arkansas correctly. The proper pronunciation involves 3 syllables, with the final completely silent, and each syllable with Italian sound and accent on the first and last syllables. This isn't just a polite suggestion from tourism boards. This is official legislative language that reflects deep frustration with people who pronounce the state name like AR Kansas, rhyming with Kansas. The law was passed to settle the pronunciation debate once and for all, though enforcing proper pronunciation presents some rather obvious practical challenges. The Italian sound requirement is particularly specific, referring to the way vowels are pronounced in Italian, short and clear rather than the drawled or modified sounds common in English. So, technically, mispronouncing Arkansas is a violation of state law, though thankfully no one has ever been arrested for vowel crimes or syllable violations. The law exists because Arkansas residents got absolutely tired of correcting outsiders who assumed the state name followed normal English pronunciation rules. It's a legislative flex that essentially says, "We'll tell you how to say our name. Thank you very much." The requirement demonstrates how seriously states take their identity and reputation, even if it means legislating proper speech patterns. Arkansas would rather have a pronunciation law than endure another decade of being called AR Kansas by confused tourists and television announcers. 29. The global Red Solo Cup phenomenon. America has accidentally exported one of its most recognizable cultural symbols worldwide, the humble Red Solo Cup. These simple plastic drinking vessels have become so synonymous with American party culture that international students specifically request them for authentic American-themed parties, despite being available in multiple colors. The Red Solo Cup's fame exploded globally thanks to countless American movies and TV shows featuring college parties, house parties, and backyard barbecues. International viewers began associating red plastic cups with a quintessential American social experience. European students studying abroad often pack Red Solo cups in their luggage as essential American equipment, right next to their textbooks and passport. The cups have become so symbolically American that they're now sold internationally as American Party Cups often at premium prices compared to local alternatives. Party supply stores in other countries stock them specifically for customers wanting to recreate the American party aesthetic they've seen in media. It's absolutely remarkable that a disposable cup designed for convenience became an accidental ambassador for American culture around the world. The red Solo cup represents American informality, disposability, and party culture all in one simple package. Other countries use glasses, mugs, or different colored cups, but somehow America convinced the world that proper partying requires specific red plastic vessels. It's cultural influence through kitchenware, proving that sometimes the smallest symbols carry the biggest meaning in global perception. 30. Tailgating, America's parking lot obsession. Tailgating represents one of America's most baffling cultural exports. The practice of turning parking lots into elaborate outdoor dining and entertainment complexes hours before sporting events. To foreigners, the concept is completely mystifying. Why would people spend more time and energy on the parking lot party than on watching the actual game they paid to see? American tailgating involves portable grills, generators, satellite TVs, elaborate food spreads, lawn games, and sometimes even portable toilets and showers. Fans arrive 4 to 6 hours before game time to establish their temporary outdoor kingdoms, complete with team decorations and enough food to feed small armies. Some tailgating setups cost significantly more than the tickets to the actual sporting event, which raises questions about priorities and financial planning. The tradition reflects uniquely American values: the supreme importance of the social experience over the event itself, the love of elaborate food preparation, and the belief that parking lots are vastly underutilized spaces with serious party potential. Tailgating has become so integral to American sports culture that many dedicated fans prefer the parking lot experience to watching games on television at home. Foreign visitors often marvel at tailgating setups that resemble temporary cities, complete with their own social hierarchies and unwritten rules about territory and etiquette. It's a tradition that makes perfect sense to Americans and absolutely no sense to anyone else, proving that sometimes cultural practices are so specific they become impossible to export or explain to outsiders. 31. Baby showers, tempting fate or celebrating life. American baby showers represent a cultural practice that absolutely horrifies people from many other cultures, celebrating and preparing for a baby before it's actually born. In numerous countries around the world, this is considered extremely bad luck, potentially inviting misfortune by assuming everything will go perfectly. American baby showers involve elaborate gift-giving, games, detailed decorations, and careful planning for an event that celebrates something that technically hasn't happened yet. Expectant mothers receive cribs, clothes, toys, and nursery decorations weeks or months before the baby actually arrives. To many cultures, this feels like tempting fate or being presumptuously optimistic about outcomes beyond human control. The tradition reflects core American values: optimism and planning culture, the belief that positive thinking and thorough preparation lead to positive outcomes. Americans see baby showers as both practical, getting necessary supplies, and social, celebrating the expanding family. The focus is entirely on support, preparation, and community involvement in the pregnancy experience. Other cultures strongly prefer to wait until after the baby is born to celebrate and give gifts, viewing this approach as more respectful of uncertainty and the natural process. The contrast highlights completely different cultural approaches to fate, planning, and the relationship between celebration and actual outcomes. American baby showers embody the national character: relentlessly optimistic, forward planning, and determined to celebrate anticipated happiness rather than waiting for confirmed success. 32. Tipping culture's dark origins. America's tipping culture, now considered completely normal and expected, actually originated from one of the country's darkest historical chapters: post-Civil War discrimination against newly freed slaves. After Reconstruction ended, many employers refused to pay black workers full wages, instead offering $0 salaries with the expectation that tips from customers would make up the entire difference. This system allowed businesses to avoid paying fair wages while placing the complete burden of worker compensation on unsuspecting customers. It was a form of economic discrimination disguised as standard business practice, enabling employers to maintain cheap labor costs while appearing to offer legitimate employment opportunities. The practice became so entrenched in American business culture that it spread to other service industries and persisted for generations. Today's tipping culture still reflects these discriminatory origins. Service workers in many states earn below minimum wage with tips expected to bridge the gap to survival. What seems like a voluntary gesture of appreciation is actually a subsidy for businesses that don't want to pay full wages. Customers unknowingly participate in a system specifically designed to shift labor costs from employers to consumers. Other countries find American tipping culture baffling and sometimes genuinely offensive, preferring to pay service workers actual living wages and treat tips as genuine bonuses rather than essential income for survival. America's tipping system remains a persistent reminder of how discriminatory practices can become normalized cultural traditions. Embedded so deeply, they seem natural rather than historical artifacts of injustice. 33. How are you? The meaningless greeting. Americans have successfully turned a genuine question about well-being into a completely meaningless social ritual that drives people from more direct cultures absolutely crazy. How are you? In America, isn't actually a request for information about your life. It's a greeting equivalent to hello that requires no real answer beyond fine or good and definitely doesn't invite detailed responses. This linguistic quirk consistently drives international visitors to distraction because they reasonably assume Americans are genuinely asking about their welfare and respond with detailed updates about their lives, jobs, health, or emotional state. Americans, expecting a brief pleasantry, find themselves trapped in conversations they never intended to start and don't know how to escape. The practice reflects American social conventions that prioritize friendly appearance over genuine interaction. Americans use "how are you" to seem caring and interested without actually wanting to invest time in learning about someone's actual condition. It's social lubrication rather than authentic inquiry, efficiency disguised as empathy. Other cultures either skip personal questions entirely as greetings or ask them only when genuinely interested in detailed, honest answers. The American version creates a linguistic dance where both parties understand that the question is purely performative rather than informational. Foreign visitors often need explicit instruction that "how are you" doesn't require honest responses and that Americans will be confused or uncomfortable if you actually explain how you are. It's a perfect example of how Americans have turned genuine human connection into efficient social protocol. 34. Death Valley's moving rocks mystery. For decades, scientists couldn't explain one of America's strangest natural phenomena: massive rocks, some weighing 700 pounds, that mysteriously moved across Death Valley's racetrack playa, leaving perfectly straight trails up to 1,500 feet long behind them. The rocks appeared to move completely by themselves, with no visible cause or logical explanation. Theories ranged from underground seismic activity to magnetic fields to extraterrestrial intervention. The rocks moved so rarely that no one had ever witnessed the phenomenon in action, despite decades of careful observation by researchers and tourists. The trails were clearly visible, straight lines carved into the desert floor like a giant's doodles. But the mechanism remained completely mysterious. In 2014, UC San Diego scientists finally solved the puzzle using GPS tracking devices and time-lapse photography. The answer was almost as bizarre as the mystery itself. Thin sheets of window pane ice, only 3 to 5 millimeters thick, would form during rare winter conditions. When this delicate ice broke up and was pushed by light winds, it created a flotilla of ice sheets that could push the massive rocks across the desert floor at speeds up to 5 meters per minute. The solution required absolutely perfect conditions that occurred maybe once every few years. Rain to create standing water, freezing temperatures to form ice, sunlight to begin melting, and wind to move the ice sheets. It was nature's most elaborate Rube Goldberg machine, turning Death Valley into an occasional ice-powered rock transportation system that operated in secret for millennia. 35. Badwater Basin, America's lowest drama. Death Valley contains one of America's most extreme geographical ironies, Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America at 282 feet below sea level, sits only 84.6 miles from Mount Whitney, California's highest peak at 14,505 feet. This creates the greatest elevation gradient in the contiguous United States. Nearly 15,000 feet of elevation change across less than 85 miles of California landscape. The proximity is so dramatic that on exceptionally clear days, you can theoretically see Mount Whitney from Badwater Basin, though atmospheric conditions rarely allow such visibility. It's like having both the basement and penthouse of America within easy driving distance of each other. The contrast represents the extreme geological diversity packed into a relatively small geographic area. Badwater Basin got its evocative name from early surveyors whose mules refused to drink the highly saline water, hence bad water, that even desperate animals rejected. The basin contains water so salty it's nearly undrinkable, sitting in a desert so hot it holds multiple temperature records. Meanwhile, Mount Whitney experiences snow year-round at its peak, creating two completely different worlds separated by a short road trip. The elevation difference means you could theoretically start your day swimming in salt water below sea level and in it climbing through snow above 14,000 feet, experiencing everything from desert heat to alpine conditions in a single afternoon. It's geographical whiplash on a continental scale, proving that America contains entire worlds within a few hours' drive. 36. Mammoth Hot Springs, nature's limestone factory. Yellowstone's Mammoth Hot Springs operates as nature's most impressive limestone factory, depositing over 2 tons of calcium carbonate daily from water emerging at a scalding 170 degrees Fahrenheit. The springs create elaborate travertine terraces that grow and change constantly, making the landscape literally alive with geological activity that visitors can observe in real time. The hot springs work like an underground heating and delivery system that's been operating for thousands of years. Water travels deep into the earth, gets heated by geothermal activity, dissolves limestone bedrock, then emerges carrying dissolved calcium carbonate like a geological milkshake. When the hot water hits the air and cools, the calcium carbonate precipitates out, creating the distinctive white terrace formations that look like frozen waterfalls carved from marble. The terraces grow at rates visible to human observation. Some areas add several inches of new limestone deposits annually, meaning the formations are constantly changing as springs shift, die, or create new outlets. What visitors see today will look noticeably different next year, making Mammoth Hot Springs one of the most dynamic landscapes in America. The springs create their own unique ecosystem of thermophilic bacteria that thrive in the hot, mineral-rich water. Different bacteria species create different colors, painting the terraces in subtle rainbows of orange, yellow, green, and red. It's a living geological artwork where chemistry, geology, and biology collaborate to create one of Yellowstone's most distinctive features, a limestone sculpture garden that builds itself through natural processes. 37. Devil's Tower, a volcanic next 50 million year journey. Devil's Tower in Wyoming represents one of America's most distinctive geological features, an 867-foot tall volcanic neck consisting of phonolite porphyry that formed approximately 50 million years ago. The tower's most striking feature is its vertical polygonal columns, each measuring 4 to 7 feet wide, created by the cooling and contraction of magma between sedimentary rock layers. The formation process was like nature's version of architectural engineering. Magma intruded between existing rock layers, cooled slowly and uniformly, then contracted as it solidified. This contraction created the geometric fracture patterns that appear almost artificial, straight lines and perfect angles that seem too regular to be natural. Over millions of years, the surrounding softer sedimentary rock eroded away, leaving the harder volcanic core standing alone like a massive stone skyscraper rising from the prairie. Devil's Tower became America's first national monument in 1906, designated by President Theodore Roosevelt, who recognized its unique geological and cultural significance. The tower attracts rock climbers from around the world who scale the vertical columns, though climbing is restricted during certain periods to respect Native American religious ceremonies that consider the tower sacred. The tower's name reflects European American naming conventions, though Native tribes have their own names and legends about the formation that predate European contact by centuries. It's a reminder that geological features can be simultaneously natural wonders, recreational destinations, and sacred sites, depending on cultural perspective and historical context. 38. Carlsbad Caverns, sulfuric acid architecture. Carlsbad Caverns formed through a rare geological process that makes it unique among world cave systems. Sulfuric acid speleogenesis, rather than the typical carbonic acid dissolution that creates most limestone caves. This unusual chemistry created the massive underground chambers that make Carlsbad one of America's most spectacular subterranean landscapes. The process began when hydrogen sulfide-rich water from underground oil reservoirs mixed with oxygenated groundwater, creating sulfuric acid that was much more powerful than the weak carbonic acid that typically dissolves limestone. This allowed the acid to carve enormous chambers relatively quickly in geological terms. The Big Room, Carlsbad's largest chamber, measures 4,000 feet long, 625 feet wide, and 255 feet high, large enough to hold 14 football fields with room to spare. The caverns contain over 119 known caves, with new discoveries continuing as explorers map previously unknown passages that extend deep into the earth. The limestone formations include massive stalactites, stalagmites, and other speleothems created over millions of years as mineral-rich water dripped and flowed through the chambers. Carlsbad's unique formation process created unusually large chambers and distinctive rock formations not found in typical limestone caves anywhere else in the world. The result is an underground landscape so spectacular that early explorers had difficulty convincing people on the surface that such enormous spaces existed beneath their feet. It's nature's version of underground architecture, carved by chemistry rather than tools, and more impressive than most human construction projects. 39. Death Valley's temperature records. Death Valley holds multiple world temperature records that cement its reputation as one of Earth's most extreme environments where humans can barely survive. The valley recorded the highest reliably measured air temperature on Earth, 134 degrees Fahrenheit, 56.7 degrees Celsius on July 10, 1913, at Furnace Creek. This record has stood for over 110 years, despite global warming and numerous attempts by other locations to claim the title. But air temperature is only part of Death Valley's extreme story. On July 15, 1972, the ground surface temperature reached 201 degrees Fahrenheit, 93.9 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cause severe burns within seconds of contact. The combination of air and ground temperatures creates an environment so hostile that prolonged exposure without protection can be fatal. The valley's temperature extremes result from its unique geography. It's a below-sea-level basin surrounded by mountains that trap hot air and prevent cooling. The dry desert air contains little moisture to moderate temperatures, while the dark desert floor absorbs and radiates heat like a massive natural oven. Clear skies allow maximum solar heating during the day and rapid cooling at night, creating temperature swings that can exceed 40 degrees. Death Valley's records aren't just impressive numbers on a thermometer. They represent the absolute limits of survivable environments on Earth. The temperatures are so extreme that park rangers regularly treat heat-related emergencies, and visitors are warned that summer hiking can be deadly. It's a place where thermometers themselves can become casualties of the heat they're trying to measure. 40. MKUltra, the CIA's mind control nightmare. Between 1953 and 1973, the CIA conducted one of the most disturbing programs in American government history, MKUltra, a mind control research project that administered LSD and other drugs to unknowing subjects through over 130 research programs. The project consumed an estimated $10 million and involved experiments so unethical they violated every principle of informed consent and basic human rights. The program's most shocking case involved a Kentucky mental patient who received LSD for 174 consecutive days under the direction of Sidney Gottlieb, Ultra's chief chemist who seemed determined to push the boundaries of human experimentation. Other experiments included giving LSD to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and even CIA employees without their knowledge or consent. The goal was to develop techniques for mind control, interrogation, and psychological warfare against America's enemies. MKUltra operated through universities, hospitals, and research institutions across North America, often without the knowledge of the institution's administrators who thought they were conducting legitimate research. Researchers used academic cover to conduct experiments that would have been impossible to justify publicly. Many subjects suffered permanent psychological damage, and some died as a direct result of the experiments. The program was exposed in the 1970s during congressional investigations into CIA abuses. Most MKUltra records were destroyed in 1973 on orders from CIA Director Richard Helms, making it impossible to know the full extent of the experiments. The program remains one of the darkest chapters in American intelligence history, proving that the pursuit of national security can lead to profound violations of human dignity and medical ethics. 41. DARPA's Mechanical Elephant Disaster. In the 1960s, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, faced a significant transportation problem in Vietnam. How to move heavy equipment through dense jungle terrain where traditional vehicles couldn't operate effectively. Their solution was ambitious, bizarre, and remarkably short-lived. Develop mechanical elephant legs that could navigate jungle terrain while carrying substantial military loads. The project involved creating servo-actuated mechanical legs that could mimic animal locomotion, essentially building a walking machine that could step over obstacles, navigate uneven terrain, and carry military supplies through areas completely inaccessible to wheeled or tracked vehicles. The concept was actually scientifically sound. Animals had solved the jungle transportation problem millions of years ago through evolution, so why not copy their solutions? However, the project was immediately shut down by the DARPA director, not because of technical problems or engineering failures, but to avoid congressional scrutiny and public ridicule. The idea of spending taxpayer money on mechanical elephant legs during wartime was politically indefensible, regardless of the engineering merits or potential military applications. The program disappeared so quickly that few records remain of the actual mechanical designs or test results. The Mechanical Elephant Project represents DARPA's willingness to explore unconventional solutions to military problems, even when those solutions sound like science fiction. It also demonstrates how political considerations can terminate promising research when the concept is too strange for public consumption. Sometimes the biggest obstacle to innovation isn't technical difficulty. It's explaining the idea to people who control the funding. 42. Project Blue Book, UFOs and Government Secrets. From 1952 to 1969, the U.S. Air Force conducted Project Blue Book, a systematic investigation of UFO sightings that examined 12,618 reported incidents using scientific methodology and military analysis. The project used a three-phase analysis system to categorize sightings, ultimately classifying 701 cases as unidentified, meaning they couldn't be explained as natural phenomena, experimental aircraft, or misidentified objects. The project operated during the height of Cold War paranoia, when any unidentified aircraft could potentially be Soviet technology or reconnaissance missions. Air Force investigators traveled across the country interviewing witnesses, examining physical evidence, and attempting to provide rational explanations for mysterious sightings. Most cases were eventually explained as weather phenomena, aircraft, satellites, or astronomical objects. However, the 701 unexplained cases created a permanent mystery in government files. These sightings involved credible witnesses, including military personnel and commercial pilots, who reported objects exhibiting flight characteristics beyond known technology. The cases included radar confirmations, multiple witness accounts, and physical evidence that defied conventional explanation using 1960s science and technology. Decades later, the CIA revealed that U-2 and Oxcart spy plane flights accounted for over half of all UFO reports in the late 1950s and 1960s. The government was essentially investigating its own secret aircraft, creating a feedback loop where classified military technology generated UFO reports that triggered official investigations. Project Blue Book became a case study in how government secrecy can create the very mysteries it's trying to solve. 43. Nevada Test Site, Atomic Veterans and Radiation Exposure. Between 1951 and 1992, the Nevada Test Site became ground zero for America's atmospheric nuclear testing program, exposing approximately 400,000 servicemen to dangerous levels of radiation during 928 announced nuclear tests. These atomic veterans participated in exercises designed to test the effects of nuclear weapons on military operations, often without fully understanding the long-term health consequences of radiation exposure. Operation Plum Bob in 1957 alone produced 32% of all civilian radiation exposure from atmospheric nuclear testing in the United States. Soldiers were positioned as close as 2,700 yards from ground zero, then ordered to advance toward the blast site immediately after detonation to simulate post-nuclear battlefield conditions. Many were given minimal protective equipment and little accurate information about radiation dangers, despite growing scientific evidence about the health risks. The long-term health consequences were absolutely devastating. Studies revealed that atomic veterans experienced a 50% higher death rate from leukemia compared to the general population, along with increased rates of other cancers and radiation-related illnesses. The government initially denied these health effects, and veterans spent decades fighting for recognition and compensation for their service-related illnesses. The Nevada tests represented a massive human experiment conducted in the name of national defense. The government prioritized military readiness over individual safety, creating a generation of veterans whose service included involuntary participation in radiation exposure studies. The atomic veterans' experience remains a sobering reminder of how national security imperatives can override basic protection of military personnel who trusted their government to keep them safe. 44. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study, Medical Racism and Government Betrayal. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service conducted one of the most unethical medical studies in American history, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, which denied treatment to 399 African American men with syphilis and 201 without the disease. The goal was to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis in black men, treating human beings like laboratory animals. The men, primarily poor sharecroppers from rural Alabama, were told they were receiving free health care for bad blood, a local term for various ailments. They were never informed they had syphilis or that effective treatment existed. The study provided free meals, medical exams, and burial insurance, but absolutely no actual treatment for the disease that was slowly killing them. When penicillin was discovered as a syphilis cure in the 1940s, researchers actively prevented participants from receiving treatment, even going so far as to contact local draft boards to ensure that participants wouldn't receive treatment through military service. The The study continued despite the availability of a simple, effective cure that could have saved hundreds of lives. The Tuskegee study was exposed in 1972 by a whistleblower, leading to public outrage and significant changes in medical research ethics. The study's revelation destroyed trust between African American communities and medical institutions, contributing to ongoing vaccine hesitancy and medical mistrust that persists today. It remains a powerful example of how scientific research can become a tool of racial oppression when conducted without ethical oversight or informed consent, and how government-sponsored racism can masquerade as legitimate medical research. 45. DARPA's Cyborg Insect Program. Between 2006 and 2009, DARPA funded one of its most science fiction-like projects, implanting electronic transmitters in insects to create remote-controlled surveillance systems that sounded like something from a spy movie. The program aimed to develop cyborg insects that could be directed to specific locations for military intelligence gathering, essentially turning beetles and moths into living drones with biological power sources. The project involved surgically implanting transmitters into insects during their pupal stage, allowing the electronics to integrate with the insect's natural development process. Researchers successfully demonstrated remote control of insect flight patterns using radioactively powered transmitters containing nickel-63 isotopes. The insects could be directed to fly to specific locations and remain there for extended surveillance purposes, theoretically providing intelligence capabilities that mechanical drones couldn't match. The Cyborg Insect Program represented DARPA's exploration of biomechanical hybrid systems that combine natural biological capabilities with artificial control systems. Insects offered significant advantages over mechanical drones. They were completely inconspicuous, required no fuel, and could navigate complex environments using natural abilities honed by millions of years of evolution. The project raised serious ethical questions about animal experimentation and the militarization of living creatures for warfare purposes. While the technology proved feasible, practical applications remained limited by factors such as insect lifespan, communication range, and payload capacity. The program eventually ended, but it demonstrated how modern military research continues to blur the line between science fiction and scientific reality in increasingly bizarre ways. 46. Central Park's Mysterious Residents. The 2010 U.S. Census produced one of New York City's most baffling mysteries. 25 people were officially counted as living in Central Park, with absolutely no explanation for government officials. Central Park is supposed to be a public park, not a residential area. There are no apartment buildings, houses, or official housing of any kind within the park boundaries. Yet somehow, 25 people managed to list Central Park as their primary residence on official census forms, and the Census Bureau counted them without question or clarification. The mystery deepened when officials refused to provide any explanation for these residents. Were they homeless individuals camping in the park? Parks Department employees with special living arrangements? People with fake addresses trying to game the system? The Census Bureau suggested they were either homeless or Parks Department employees, but provided no concrete evidence or documentation to support either theory. The count raises fascinating questions about urban homelessness, bureaucratic record-keeping, and how government agencies handle unusual living situations. It's also possible that some people simply listed Central Park as their address as a form of protest or bureaucratic rebellion, testing whether anyone actually verifies census data. The Central Park residents remain one of New York's most enduring modern mysteries, proving that even in the most surveilled city in America, some people can still slip through the cracks of official documentation and live completely off the grid in plain sight. 47. Wayne Gretzky's impossible assist record. Wayne Gretzky's hockey statistics are so ridiculous they sound made up, but the most mind-blowing fact about the Great One involves just his assists. Gretzky's career assists alone total 1,963, which amazingly exceeds the second-place all-time scorer Jaromir Jagr's total career points of 1,921. Think about that for a moment. Gretzky could have never scored a single goal in his entire career, and he would still be the NHL's all-time leading scorer based solely on his assists. This means Gretzky was so dominant at setting up other players that his selfless play alone outperformed every other player's combined goals and assists throughout their entire careers. Hockey assists are awarded to the last two players on the scoring team to touch the puck before a goal. So accumulating assists requires both incredible vision and consistent teamwork with different line mates over many seasons. Gretzky's assist total represents not just individual brilliance, but an almost supernatural ability to make other players better and create scoring opportunities from seemingly impossible situations. The record becomes even more impressive when you consider that Gretzky also scored 894 goals, meaning his total points, 2,857, are nearly 1,000 points ahead of the second-place scorer. It's a statistical dominance so complete that it's unlikely to ever be approached, let alone broken. In modern hockey, where defensive systems and goaltending have evolved significantly since Gretzky's era. 48. Wilt Chamberlain's time-defying season. Wilt Chamberlain's 1961-62 season represents perhaps the most mathematically impossible achievement in sports history. The 7-foot center averaged 48.5 minutes per game, in a sport where games last exactly 48 minutes. This means Chamberlain played every single minute of every single game, plus all overtime periods, for an entire NBA season. During this superhuman campaign, Chamberlain also averaged 50.4 points and 25.7 rebounds per game, meaning he was the most dominant player on the court while literally never taking a break. The mathematical reality is staggering. Chamberlain played 3,882 minutes during the regular season, which exceeded the total game time by 164 minutes, meaning he spent nearly 3 full games worth of time playing overtime. Modern NBA players are carefully managed with load management and rest days to prevent injury and fatigue. The idea of a player never leaving the court for an entire season seems almost fictional. Chamberlain's endurance was legendary, but playing every minute of every game while maintaining elite performance levels defies modern understanding of human athletic limitations. The record also highlights how the game has changed. Modern basketball is faster and more athletic, making Chamberlain's Ironman performance even more impressive in retrospect. No current NBA player has come close to averaging even 40 minutes per game, making Chamberlain's 48.5-minute average seem like it belongs in a different sport entirely. 49. The world's largest termite. Providence, Rhode Island, is home to one of America's most unusual landmarks. A 58-foot-long blue termite sculpture that sits atop the New England Pest Control Building like a giant insect monument. The massive termite stands 928 times actual termite size, making it visible from miles away and serving as both advertising and accidental art installation. The sculpture was built as a marketing gimmick for the pest control company, but it's become such an iconic part of Providence's skyline that it's officially listed on Rhode Island state government websites as a notable landmark. The giant termite raises questions about effective advertising strategies. Most companies use billboards or commercials, but New England Pest Control decided to announce their services with a building-sized representation of their primary enemy. The termite has become a beloved local curiosity, attracting tourists who make special trips to photograph the enormous insect. It's probably the only pest control advertisement that people actively seek out for entertainment. The sculpture demonstrates American entrepreneurial creativity and the willingness to embrace the absurd for commercial purposes. In most countries, a giant termite would be considered an eyesore, but Americans have turned it into a tourist attraction. The termite also serves as an unintentional monument to human relationship with insects, celebrating the creatures we spend billions of dollars trying to eliminate from our homes and buildings. Its advertising so effective it transcends commerce and becomes folk art. 50. The NFL's bovine dependency. The National Football League has a surprisingly intimate relationship with America's cattle industry, requiring leather from approximately 3,000 cows annually to supply enough footballs for professional games. Each NFL football requires specific leather quality and processing that can only come from certain types of cowhide, creating a substantial agricultural demand that most fans never consider. The leather must meet strict specifications for grip, durability, and performance under various weather conditions. Not just any cow leather will work. The NFL requires premium hides that meet precise standards for professional play. This means the football industry creates a direct economic link between America's cattle ranches and Sunday afternoon entertainment, with thousands of cows contributing to each NFL season. The requirement becomes even more interesting when you consider backup footballs, practice balls, and replacement balls for different weather conditions. Teams go through hundreds of footballs during a season. The leather processing involved traditional craftsmanship techniques that haven't changed significantly in decades, making NFL footballs one of the few mass-produced items still made using essentially artisanal methods. The cow-to-football pipeline represents a uniquely American industrial process where agriculture, entertainment, and sports technology intersect in ways that would seem bizarre to outside observers. It's also a reminder that even the most modern sports depend on ancient materials and traditional craftsmanship, connecting high-tech athletics to age-old farming and leatherworking traditions. 51. The record-breaking wedding party. Tina Ackles of Safety Harbor, Florida, didn't just plan a wedding. She orchestrated what might be the most logistically complex ceremony in history by having 168 bridesmaids at her 2015 wedding. The previous world record was 96 bridesmaids, so Ackles nearly doubled the existing record in a single ceremony that probably required military-level coordination to execute successfully. The massive wedding party was made possible because Ackles combined her wedding with her American Business Women's Association annual conference, essentially turning a professional networking event into a record-breaking marriage ceremony. The logistical challenges must have been staggering. Coordinating 168 bridesmaids means managing 168 different schedules, dress sizes, travel arrangements, and personalities, all while planning an actual wedding. The ceremony photos probably looked more like a corporate group photo than a traditional wedding, with bridesmaids extending far beyond the camera frame in every direction. The record raises questions about wedding priorities and the modern tendency to turn personal celebrations into social media spectacles and competitive events. But it also demonstrates uniquely American values. The bigger is better mentality, the desire to break records, and the ability to turn professional networking into personal celebration. Ackles proved that with enough planning and the right community connections, even the most traditional ceremonies can become record-breaking spectacular events that capture national attention. 52. The star-nosed mole's lightning speed. The star-nosed mole represents one of nature's most bizarre evolutionary experiments, and it happens to live right here in the northeastern United States. This small mammal has developed a star-shaped nose containing 22 fleshy appendages and an incredible 100,000 nerve fibers, making it the most sensitive touch organ in the animal kingdom. But the mole's most impressive feature isn't its appearance, it's its speed. The star-nosed mole can identify and consume food in just 8 milliseconds, making it officially the fastest eating mammal on Earth. To put this in perspective, 8 milliseconds is faster than the human eye can track. The mole's feeding process happens so quickly it can only be studied using high-speed cameras that slow down the action. The mole's star-shaped nose works like a highly sensitive radar system, capable of touching and evaluating 13 different locations in a single second while searching for food. This incredible speed allows the mole to survive in environments where food is scarce and energy conservation is critical. Every calorie counts when you live underground in cold climates. The star-nosed mole's abilities seem almost supernatural, but they represent millions of years of evolution perfecting an underground lifestyle that most animals couldn't survive. It's a reminder that some of nature's most amazing creatures live right in America's backyard, performing feats of speed and sensitivity that make human abilities seem sluggish by comparison. 53. The world's oldest living things. California and Nevada are home to some of the oldest living organisms on Earth. Bristlecone pine trees that have been growing for thousands of years in the high-altitude deserts of the American West. The most famous of these ancient trees is Methuselah, which has reached the remarkable age of 4,856 years, meaning it was already over 2,000 years old when Jesus was born. But even Methuselah isn't the oldest. There's an unnamed bristlecone pine that exceeds 5,060 years, making it older than the Egyptian pyramids and predating most of recorded human history. These trees achieve their incredible longevity through a combination of harsh growing conditions and evolutionary adaptations that would kill most other plants. Growing at elevations between 9,800 and 11,000 feet, bristlecone pines endure extreme temperature variations, intense UV radiation, and minimal precipitation. These brutal conditions create slow growth and incredibly dense, resinous wood that's resistant to insects, fungi, and decay. The trees grow so slowly that they add only a tiny amount of wood each year. But this slow growth creates wood so dense and durable it can survive for millennia. Many of these ancient trees are still alive and growing, meaning they've witnessed the entire span of human civilization from hunter-gatherer societies to the digital age. They represent living links to the ancient past, survivors from an era when the world was completely different, but somehow still recognizable to modern eyes. 54. Carlsbad Caverns Nightly Air Show. Every summer evening at Carlsbad Caverns, nature puts on one of America's most spectacular wildlife displays as over 250,000 Mexican free-tailed bats emerge from the cave in a dramatic spiral pattern. The bat flight begins at sunset when the entire colony exits the cave to hunt for insects, creating a living tornado of wings that can be seen for miles. The bats emerge in a counterclockwise spiral that grows larger and faster as more bats join the exodus, eventually forming a massive column of flying mammals that defies easy description. This nightly phenomenon attracts thousands of visitors who gather at the cave entrance to witness what many consider one of the most impressive wildlife spectacles in North America. The bats migrate to Mexico for the winter and return each spring, making the flight a seasonal event that runs from April through October. During peak summer months, the colony can number over 400,000 bats, making it one of the largest known bat colonies in the world. The bats consume enormous quantities of insects each night, providing natural pest control for the surrounding region while creating an ecosystem service worth millions of dollars annually. The flight represents a perfect example of how wildlife tourism can create economic value for conservation, as visitors spend money to witness natural phenomena that require habitat protection to continue. It's also a reminder that some of America's most impressive attractions aren't human-made monuments, but natural events that have been occurring for thousands of years before humans arrived to witness them. 55. America's venomous lizards. The southwestern United States is home to one of only 2 venomous lizard species in the entire world. The Gila monster, a distinctive reptile that grows up to 2 feet long and sports colorful orange and black bead-like scales. Gila monsters are protected by law in Arizona due to habitat loss and their importance to the ecosystem, making them one of the few venomous animals that humans actively work to conserve. The lizard's venom isn't typically fatal to humans, but it can cause excruciating pain, swelling, and other serious symptoms that require medical attention. Unlike venomous snakes that inject venom through fangs, Gila monsters deliver venom through grooves in their teeth during prolonged biting, making their bite both venomous and mechanically dangerous. The lizards are surprisingly slow-moving for a venomous predator, relying on their powerful bite and toxic saliva rather than speed to subdue prey. Gila monsters spend most of their time underground in burrows, emerging primarily during cooler months to hunt for eggs, small mammals, and other prey. The lizard's distinctive coloration serves as a warning to potential predators, advertising its dangerous nature through bright colors that signal toxicity. Gila monsters represent an evolutionary approach to venom that's completely different from snakes, demonstrating that nature has developed multiple solutions to the challenge of chemical warfare. They're living reminders that North America's deserts contain dangerous wildlife that commands respect, even if it moves slowly and prefers to avoid human contact. 56. Wyoming's escalator shortage. The entire state of Wyoming, despite covering 97,814 square miles, contains only 2 escalators according to documented state infrastructure records. This means Wyoming has fewer escalators than most shopping malls, creating a state where vertical transportation is almost entirely dependent on stairs and elevators. The escalator scarcity reflects Wyoming's rural character and low population density, but it also creates a unique situation where most residents have limited experience with moving stairs. Wyoming's 2 escalators have achieved almost legendary status among locals, with people making special trips to ride them as novelty experiences. The lack of escalators means that multi-story buildings in Wyoming must rely on elevators or stairs, potentially creating accessibility challenges for people with mobility issues. The escalator shortage also means Wyoming children might reach adulthood without ever experiencing the unique sensation of riding moving stairs, making escalators a foreign technology when they travel to other states. Wyoming's escalator situation demonstrates how geography and population density can create unexpected infrastructure limitations that most Americans take for granted. It's also a reminder that modern conveniences aren't equally distributed across the country, and that state-by-state infrastructure can vary dramatically based on local needs and economic conditions. The escalator count makes Wyoming unique among American states, proving that even basic transportation technology can become a regional curiosity when circumstances align in unusual ways. 57. Vermont's Visual Purity Campaign. Since 1968, Vermont has maintained one of the most comprehensive billboard bans in America, making it one of only 4 states that completely prohibit billboard advertising as part of urban beautification efforts. The ban reflects Vermont's commitment to preserving scenic beauty and preventing commercial visual pollution from destroying the state's rural character and natural landscapes. Vermont joins Alaska, Maine, and Hawaii in completely eliminating billboards, creating highways and scenic routes that offer unobstructed views of natural beauty. The billboard ban was initially controversial, with businesses arguing it violated free speech rights and hurt local commerce by limiting advertising opportunities. But Vermont held firm in its commitment to visual purity, and the result has been consistently praised by tourists and residents who appreciate the uncluttered landscape. The state's tourism industry has benefited significantly from the billboard ban, as visitors consistently cite Vermont's scenic beauty as a major attraction without realizing that part of what they're enjoying is the absence of commercial signage. Vermont's approach demonstrates that sometimes effective marketing involves removing marketing entirely, letting natural beauty speak for itself without commercial interference. The ban also reflects Vermont's independent political culture and willingness to prioritize aesthetic values over purely economic considerations. Vermont proves that states can successfully resist commercial pressure and maintain environmental values, even when those values conflict with short-term business interests. 58. Montana's record snowflake. Montana holds one of the most unusual weather records in American history, the largest snowflake ever recorded, which measured an incredible 15 inches across when it fell in 1887. The giant snowflake was documented by weather observers who managed to measure it before it melted, creating an official record that has never been matched or exceeded. To put this in perspective, most snowflakes measure between 1 to 5 millimeters, making Montana's record snowflake literally hundreds of times larger than typical snow crystals. The massive snowflake was probably formed by multiple smaller snowflakes that froze together during ideal atmospheric conditions, creating a supercrystal that defied normal meteorological expectations. The record demonstrates Montana's capacity for extreme weather events that push the boundaries of what's considered meteorologically possible. Modern weather monitoring equipment makes it unlikely that such a large snowflake would go unnoticed today, but it also means we can verify that nothing approaching Montana's 1887 record has occurred in recent decades. The snowflake record adds to Montana's reputation for extreme weather, including some of the coldest temperatures, heaviest snowfalls, and most dramatic temperature swings in American history. It's also a reminder that weather records from the late 1800s documented phenomena that modern meteorology struggles to explain or duplicate, suggesting that 19th century weather might have been more extreme than current climate patterns. Montana's snowflake proves that sometimes the most impressive natural phenomena occur once and never repeat, creating permanent records of nature's occasional extremes. 59. Washington's Sasquatch Sanctuary. Whatcom County, Washington, has taken the unprecedented step of designating itself as an official Sasquatch protection and refuge area under a 1991 county ordinance that makes it illegal to hunt Sasquatch within the designated habitat. The ordinance treats Sasquatch as an endangered species requiring legal protection, despite the lack of confirmed scientific evidence for the creature's existence. The law makes it a felony to harm, harass, or kill any Sasquatch found within Whatcom County boundaries, with potential penalties including fines and imprisonment. The Sasquatch Protection Ordinance reflects the Pacific Northwest's deep cultural connection to Bigfoot legends and the region's commitment to environmental conservation, even for hypothetical species. The law also serves as a tourism marketing tool, attracting Bigfoot enthusiasts and cryptozoology fans who appreciate the county's official recognition of local folklore. Whatcom County's ordinance demonstrates how local governments can embrace regional myths and legends as part of their cultural identity and economic development strategy. The Sasquatch Protection Law places Whatcom County in the unusual position of legally protecting a creature that may not exist, while simultaneously acknowledging the possibility that it might. The ordinance also raises interesting legal questions about evidence requirements for species protection and the relationship between folklore and environmental law. Whether or not Sasquatch exists, Whatcom County has created a legal framework that treats cryptozoological conservation seriously while embracing the region's unique cultural heritage. 60. Hawaii's Coconut Mail Service. Hawaii offers one of the most unique postal services in America: the ability to mail whole coconuts without any wrapping or packaging, as long as they're properly dried and decorated with messages or artwork. The U.S. Postal Service officially recognizes coconuts as mailable items under specific conditions, continuing a traditional practice that dates back to Hawaii's early tourism industry. Visitors can purchase coconuts, decorate them with messages or paintings, attach proper postage, and mail them directly to friends and family on the mainland. The Coconut Mail Service requires that the coconuts be completely dried to prevent spoilage during shipping, and that they meet standard postal size and weight requirements. Many Hawaiian gift shops specialize in preparing coconuts for mailing, offering decorating services and ensuring that coconuts meet postal regulations before shipping. The practice has become a popular tourist activity, allowing visitors to send unique Hawaiian souvenirs that capture the island's tropical character in edible form. Coconut mail represents a perfect intersection of Hawaiian culture, tourism marketing, and postal service flexibility that creates memorable experiences for visitors. The service also demonstrates how traditional practices can be adapted to modern postal systems, preserving cultural customs while meeting contemporary logistical requirements. Hawaiian coconut mail proves that sometimes the most effective souvenirs are those that combine natural materials with personal messages, creating lasting memories through simple but distinctive cultural practices. 61. Georgia's Fried Chicken Etiquette Law. Gainesville, Georgia, proudly known as the poultry capital of the world, has a 1961 city ordinance that prohibits eating fried chicken with utensils within city limits. The law reflects Gainesville's fierce pride in its poultry industry and its commitment to what city officials consider proper fried chicken consumption etiquette. according to the ordinance. Fried chicken must be eaten with hands to show proper respect for the preparation and cultural significance of a dish. The law gained national attention in 2009 when a tourist was symbolically arrested for eating fried chicken with a fork, though the arrest was staged as a publicity stunt rather than actual law enforcement. Gainesville's fried chicken law demonstrates how local governments can use food regulations to promote regional identity and attract tourism attention. The ordinance also reflects Southern cultural values about food preparation and consumption, treating fried chicken as a cultural artifact requiring specific behavioral protocols. The law serves multiple purposes, promoting Gainesville's poultry industry, attracting media attention, and preserving traditional Southern eating customs. While the ordinance isn't seriously enforced, it creates a memorable legal quirk that visitors associate with Gainesville's commitment to poultry excellence. The fried chicken law proves that food regulations can be effective marketing tools when they reflect genuine local pride and cultural traditions. 62. Illinois' fire-breathing dragon. Vandalia, Illinois, features one of America's most unusual municipal landmarks, a 35-foot-long metal dragon named Kaskaskia Dragon that literally breathes real propane fire when coins are inserted into its activation system. The dragon was built in 1995 as a permanent municipal attraction, combining medieval fantasy with modern pyrotechnics to create a genuine fire-breathing monument. Visitors can insert coins to trigger the dragon's fire-breathing mechanism, making it an interactive landmark that provides entertainment value for tourism dollars. The dragon represents Vandalia's commitment to unique attractions that differentiate the city from typical municipal offerings and create memorable visitor experiences. The fire-breathing mechanism requires regular maintenance and safety inspections to ensure that the propane system operates safely while producing impressive flames. The Kaskaskia Dragon demonstrates how small cities can create distinctive attractions using creativity and modest budgets rather than expensive development projects. The dragon also reflects American fascination with medieval imagery and fantasy themes, bringing European folklore traditions to Midwestern municipal planning. Vandalia's dragon proves that effective tourism attractions don't require natural wonders or historical significance. Sometimes imagination and engineering skill can create equally compelling destinations. The fire-breathing feature makes the dragon more than just a sculpture. It's a functional pyrotechnic device that provides active entertainment for visitors willing to pay for the experience. 63. Colorado's Headless Chicken Celebration. Fruita, Colorado, celebrates one of the most bizarre survival stories in American folklore with an annual festival honoring Mike the Headless Chicken, complete with a run like a headless chicken race. Mike was a Rayall chicken who lived for 18 months after his head was cut off in 1945, becoming a national sensation and proving that sometimes reality is stranger than any fiction. The chicken survived because the axe missed his jugular vein and left enough brain stem intact to maintain basic bodily functions, allowing Mike to continue living despite lacking most of his head. Mike's owner, Lloyd Olson, kept the chicken alive by feeding him grain and water through his exposed esophagus, eventually taking Mike on a national tour that earned thousands of dollars. The annual festival includes the Headless Chicken Race, food vendors, live music, and various activities that celebrate Mike's remarkable survival story. Fruita's festival demonstrates how communities can turn local folklore into successful tourism events that attract visitors and generate economic activity. The celebration also reflects American fascination with unusual survival stories and the ability to find humor in even the most bizarre circumstances. Mike's story has become part of Colorado folklore, proving that sometimes the most unlikely events can become permanent parts of regional cultural identity. The festival shows how small towns can use unique local history to create annual events that bring communities together while attracting outside visitors and media attention. 64. Habub Dust Storms, Nature's Moving Walls. The southwestern United States experiences some of the most dramatic weather phenomena on Earth. Habub dust storms that create massive walls of dust reaching 10,000 feet high and traveling at speeds up to 60 miles per hour. These storms form when thunderstorm downdrafts create powerful wind gusts that pick up enormous quantities of desert sand and dust, creating advancing walls of particles that can engulf entire cities. Habubs can extend for hundreds of miles, turning day into night as they pass over populated areas and reducing visibility to near zero within minutes. The storms pose serious health risks, particularly for people with respiratory conditions, as they fill the air with fine particles that can penetrate deep into lungs. Habubs also create significant transportation hazards, forcing airports to close and making highway travel extremely dangerous due to sudden visibility loss. The storms demonstrate the raw power of desert weather systems and the dramatic temperature and pressure changes that can occur in arid climates. Phoenix and other southwestern cities have developed warning systems specifically for habubs, treating them as serious weather emergencies that require immediate protective action. The storms typically last 1 to 3 hours but can dump enormous quantities of dust and sand on urban areas, requiring extensive cleanup efforts and clogging air filtration systems. Habubs represent one of America's most visually spectacular weather phenomena, creating apocalyptic-looking conditions that seem more like disaster movie special effects than actual meteorology. 65. Heat bursts, midnight temperature explosions. The Great Plains experiences one of the most counterintuitive weather phenomena in America. Heat bursts that cause temperature increases of 20-plus degrees in just minutes during nighttime hours. Heat bursts occur when hot, dry air from dying thunderstorms rapidly descends and compresses, creating sudden temperature spikes accompanied by wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour. These events typically happen between midnight and dawn, when temperatures should be naturally cooling, making the sudden heat surge particularly disorienting. Heat bursts can raise temperatures from comfortable evening levels to dangerous heat index readings in less than 15 minutes, creating emergency conditions with almost no warning. The phenomenon is most common in Kansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma, where flat terrain and specific atmospheric conditions create ideal heat burst environments. The rapid temperature changes can cause glass to crack from thermal expansion and create dangerous conditions for anyone caught outdoors during the event. Heat bursts demonstrate how quickly weather conditions can change in continental climates and how atmospheric physics can create seemingly impossible meteorological events. The events are relatively rare, but have been documented causing temperature increases from 70 degrees Fahrenheit to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 30 minutes, creating dangerous heat exposure during what should be cool nighttime hours. Heat bursts prove that Great Plains weather can be as extreme and unpredictable as any climate zone in America, creating conditions that challenge human adaptation and emergency preparedness. 66. Spearfish's temperature roller coaster. Spearfish, South Dakota, recorded the fastest temperature change in recorded history when the temperature dropped 58 degrees Fahrenheit in just 27 minutes on January 22, 1943. The dramatic temperature swing occurred when Arctic Canadian air collided with Pacific warm air, creating a meteorological battle that produced the most extreme temperature change ever documented. Witnesses reported that car windows cracked from the rapid temperature change, and people could literally feel the temperature dropping minute by minute as the cold front passed. The temperature plummeted from 54 degrees Fahrenheit to -4 degrees Fahrenheit in less than half an hour, creating conditions so extreme they challenged the basic assumptions about how quickly weather could change. The event demonstrates the incredible temperature variations possible in continental climates, where different air masses can collide with dramatic results. Spearfish's record illustrates how geography can create unique weather conditions, as South Dakota's location makes it susceptible to collisions between vastly different air masses. The rapid temperature change created emergency conditions for anyone outdoors, as clothing appropriate for 54 degrees Fahrenheit weather became dangerously inadequate within minutes. The record has never been approached, making Spearfish's 1943 temperature drop a unique meteorological event that may never be repeated. The temperature change was so extreme that modern meteorologists still study the event to understand the atmospheric conditions that could produce such rapid weather transitions. 67. Old Faithful's clockwork reliability. Yellowstone's Old Faithful geyser has maintained remarkable consistency for over 150 years, averaging eruptions every 90 minutes since 2000, while shooting 3,700 to 8,400 gallons of water 106 to 185 feet high at temperatures reaching 244 degrees Fahrenheit. The geyser's predictability makes it one of the most reliable natural phenomena in America, allowing park officials to provide reasonably accurate eruption predictions for millions of visitors annually. Old Faithful's consistency results from its unique underground plumbing system, which maintains steady pressure and heat conditions that create regular eruption cycles. The geyser draws water from deep underground reservoirs heated by Yellowstone's volcanic activity, creating the pressure buildup necessary for spectacular eruptions. Each eruption lasts 1.5 to 5 minutes and releases thousands of gallons of superheated water and steam, making it one of nature's most impressive displays of geothermal power. Old Faithful's reliability has made it Yellowstone's most famous attraction and a symbol of American natural wonders, attracting millions of visitors who plan their schedules around eruption predictions. The geyser's consistency isn't perfect. Eruption intervals can range from 60 to 110 minutes, depending on underground conditions and seasonal variations. Historical records show that Old Faithful stopped erupting entirely during severe drought periods in the 13th and 14th centuries, proving that even reliable natural phenomena can be disrupted by extreme climate conditions. Old Faithful represents the intersection of geological stability and tourist accessibility, providing predictable natural entertainment that has captivated visitors for generations. 68. The Great Basin's Disappearing Act. The Great Basin covers an enormous 200,000 square miles across Nevada, Utah, and portions of Idaho, California, and Oregon as an internally drained region where surface water cannot reach any ocean. All precipitation that falls within the Great Basin either evaporates, sinks into groundwater, or flows into closed basins with no outlet to the sea, creating a vast area where water essentially disappears. The region contains numerous isolated mountain ranges separated by valleys, creating a landscape that early explorers described as a sea in a storm due to the wave-like appearance of parallel mountain ridges. The Great Basin's internal drainage means that rivers and streams flow toward the center of valleys rather than toward oceans, creating unique ecosystems adapted to episodic water availability. Lake Tahoe, despite being located within the Great Basin, actually drains to the Pacific Ocean through the Truckee River, making it technically outside the basin's internal drainage system. The region's isolation and harsh climate have created unique plant and animal species found nowhere else, including ancient bristlecone pines and desert-adapted wildlife. The Great Basin demonstrates how continental geography can create vast areas that operate independently of normal water cycles, essentially functioning as closed systems within larger continents. The region's internal drainage has created some of America's most unusual landscapes, including salt flats, alkali lakes, and desert playas that alternate between flooding and complete dryness. 69. Mount Whitney to Death Valley, America's elevation roller coaster. The distance between Mount Whitney, California's highest peak at 14,505 feet, and Death Valley's Badwater Basin at 282 feet below sea level spans an incredible 14,787 feet of elevation across only 84.6 miles. This creates the greatest elevation gradient in the contiguous United States, essentially traveling from alpine conditions to below sea level desert in less than 2 hours of driving. The proximity means visitors can theoretically experience snow-covered peaks and scorching desert valleys in the same day. encountering completely different ecosystems separated by a relatively short distance. The elevation change is so dramatic that it creates distinct climate zones, from Arctic alpine conditions on Mount Whitney to subtropical desert conditions in Death Valley. Mount Whitney requires climbing permits and mountaineering experience to reach the summit, while Badwater Basin is accessible by car, creating vastly different accessibility for America's highest and lowest points. The contrast demonstrates California's incredible geographical diversity, containing environments that would normally be separated by thousands of miles of latitude within a single state. The elevation gradient affects everything from vegetation and wildlife to human activity and weather patterns, creating a natural laboratory for studying altitude-related environmental changes. The proximity of extreme elevations makes this region unique in North America, providing researchers and visitors with unprecedented access to diverse elevation zones within a compact geographical area. 70. Yellowstone's Earthquake Factory. Yellowstone National Park experiences 1,500 to 2,500 earthquakes annually, making it one of the most seismically active regions in the United States outside of California. About 50% of these earthquakes occur in swarms, where multiple earthquakes happen in close succession within localized areas, often indicating changes in underground volcanic activity. The earthquake activity helps maintain Yellowstone's famous geysers and hot springs by keeping underground water channels open and preventing mineral deposits from blocking geothermal features. The record earthquake swarm occurred in 2017 near Maple Creek, producing 2,400 individual earthquakes over 3 months, creating the most intense seismic activity in Yellowstone's recorded history. Most Yellowstone earthquakes are too small to be felt by humans, registering below magnitude 3.0, but they provide valuable data about the underground volcanic system that powers the park's geothermal features. The earthquake activity reflects Yellowstone's position over an active volcanic hotspot that creates ongoing crustal instability and underground pressure changes. Scientists use earthquake data to monitor volcanic activity and assess the potential for larger eruptions, though major volcanic events remain extremely unlikely in human timescales. The earthquake swarms often correlate with changes in geyser behavior and hot spring temperatures, demonstrating the connection between seismic activity and geothermal features. Yellowstone's earthquakes remind visitors that they're standing on one of the world's most active volcanic systems, even though most of the activity occurs far underground. 71. Montana's Testicle Festival Legacy. For 35 years, 1983 to 2018, Rock Creek Lodge in Montana hosted the legendary Testicle Festival, an annual event that consumed approximately 5,600 pounds of animal testicles and attracted thousands of visitors from around the world. The festival became a cultural phenomenon that celebrated rural American cuisine, outdoor recreation, and the ability to turn agricultural byproducts into tourist attractions. Visitors traveled from across America and internationally to experience what organizers called having a ball, creating a unique form of culinary tourism based on organ meat consumption. The festival generated significant economic activity for rural Montana, bringing tourism dollars to an area that otherwise relied primarily on ranching and agriculture. The event featured live music, camping, outdoor activities, and various testicle preparation methods, including frying, grilling, and creative recipe competitions. The festival ended in 2018 due to safety concerns and changing insurance requirements, marking the end of one of America's most unusual annual celebrations. The Testicle Festival represented rural American culture's ability to embrace unusual food traditions and turn agricultural practices into entertainment experiences. The event also demonstrated how small communities can create distinctive attractions that generate national media attention and attract visitors from far beyond local regions. The festival's 35-year run proves that even the most unusual cultural celebrations can develop lasting traditions and loyal followings when they reflect genuine community values and identity. 72. Alaska's giant vegetable empire. Alaska's unique growing conditions have produced world record vegetables that defy normal expectations about agricultural production in extreme northern climates. Scott Robb holds multiple world records for giant vegetables grown in Alaska, including a 105-pound, 14.5-ounce kale displayed at the Alaska State Fair, along with records for heaviest turnip, 39.2 pounds, kohlrabi, 97 pounds, and green cabbage, 138.25 pounds. Alaska's long summer daylight hours, sometimes exceeding 20 hours of sunlight per day, combined with cool temperatures and fertile soil, create ideal conditions for producing unusually large vegetables. The extended daylight allows plants to photosynthesize almost continuously during growing season, while cool temperatures prevent stress that typically limits plant growth in warmer climates. Alaska's record vegetables have become tourist attractions at state fairs and agricultural events, drawing visitors who want to see vegetables that dwarf typical grocery store produce. The giant vegetable phenomenon reflects Alaska's unique agricultural potential despite its reputation as a harsh, unforgiving environment for farming. Alaska's record-breaking vegetables demonstrate how extreme environmental conditions can sometimes produce unexpected benefits, rather than just challenges for agricultural production. The success of Alaska's giant vegetables has inspired other northern latitude regions to explore similar agricultural techniques and embrace extended daylight growing advantages. Alaska's vegetable records prove that agricultural innovation can thrive in unexpected locations when farmers adapt their techniques to local environmental conditions rather than fighting against them. 73. Baseball's perfect 9. Perfect innings in baseball represent one of the rarest achievements in professional sports, requiring exactly 9 pitches, 9 strikes, and 3 outs with no balls thrown at all. Only 46 perfect innings have been achieved in Major League Baseball history, making them significantly rarer than perfect games, no-hitters, or most other celebrated baseball accomplishments. The perfect inning requires not just exceptional pitching accuracy, but also cooperation from opposing batters who must swing at the first pitch and make contact that results in immediate outs. Nolan Ryan, despite his reputation for power pitching and strikeouts, achieved this rare feat during his legendary career, demonstrating the combination of skill and circumstance required. Perfect innings typically involve a combination of strikeouts and first pitch outs, requiring batters to be aggressive while pitchers maintain pinpoint control. The rarity of perfect innings makes them more statistically impressive than many more famous baseball achievements. Yet they receive less attention due to their brevity and the specific circumstances required. Modern baseball analytics have made perfect innings even more difficult to achieve, as batters are trained to work deep counts and see more pitches, making first pitch swinging less common. The perfect inning represents baseball efficiency at its highest level, combining pitcher dominance with strategic batting approaches that create optimal outcomes for both teams. Perfect innings remind fans that baseball's most impressive achievements sometimes involve mathematical precision rather than spectacular individual performances. 74 through 103. The final chapter of American Weirdness. 74. The Bone Wars, Paleontological Combat. The late 1800s witnessed one of the most bizarre scientific rivalries in American history. The Bone Wars between paleontologists Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. What started as friendly scientific competition quickly devolved into espionage, sabotage, and outright warfare over dinosaur fossils in the American West. Marsh and Cope used spies to infiltrate each other's dig sites, bribed workers to steal fossils, and even resorted to destroying fossil sites to prevent their rival from making discoveries. The rivalry became so intense that both men hired armed guards to protect their expeditions, turning paleontology into something resembling a military operation in hostile territory. The war lasted over 20 years and nearly bankrupted both scientists, who spent fortunes trying to outdo each other in fossil discoveries and scientific publications. Despite the personal animosity, The Bone Wars led to the discovery of over 130 dinosaur species and established America as a global center for paleontological research. The rivalry demonstrates how scientific competition can become destructive when personal egos and professional jealousy override collaborative research goals. The Bone Wars also reflected the Wild West mentality of the era, where even scientific endeavors were conducted with frontier justice and armed conflict. The legacy of the Bone Wars continues today in dinosaur museums across America, where visitors can see fossils discovered during this period of scientific combat. 75. The Carrington Event, when the sun attacked America. On September 1st, 1859, the most powerful solar storm in recorded history struck Earth, causing telegraph lines across America to spark, catch fire, and send operators fleeing for their lives. The Carrington Event, named after astronomer Richard Carrington, who observed the solar flare, demonstrated humanity's vulnerability to space weather long before our modern electronic dependence. Telegraph systems failed across North America and Europe, but some operators discovered they could continue sending messages using only the electrical current induced by the aurora, essentially using the solar storm as a power source. The aurora borealis appeared as far south as the Caribbean, with people in Rome and Hawaii reporting brilliant northern lights that turned night into day. Some telegraph operators received electric shocks from their equipment, while others reported that telegraph paper caught fire from the induced electrical currents. The event occurred during the peak of the telegraph era, making it a preview of how solar storms could affect modern electronic infrastructure on a massive scale. Modern scientists estimate that a Carrington-level event today would cause trillions of dollars in damage to electrical grids, satellites, and electronic systems, potentially crippling global communication. The 1859 storm remains the benchmark for space weather threats, reminding us that our technological civilization exists at the mercy of solar activity that's completely beyond human control. The Carrington Event proved that space weather can have terrestrial consequences that affect daily life, even in an era of relatively simple electrical technology. 76. Seward's Icebox, the $7.2 million bargain. The 1867 purchase of Alaska for $7.2 million was mockingly called Seward's Folly and Seward's Icebox by critics who thought Secretary of State William Seward had wasted taxpayer money on frozen wasteland. The purchase price worked out to approximately 2 cents per acre, making it one of the greatest real estate bargains in world history, though most Americans couldn't see the value at the time. Critics argued that Alaska was nothing but ice and snow with no economic potential, completely failing to anticipate the gold rushes, oil discoveries, and strategic military value that would emerge. The purchase doubled the size of the United States and provided access to vast natural resources, including gold, oil, fish, timber, and minerals worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Alaska's strategic location proved invaluable during World War II and the Cold War, providing a buffer against Russian expansion and a base for projecting American power in the Pacific. The Alaska Purchase demonstrated American expansionist ambitions and Seward's vision of continental dominance, even when public opinion strongly opposed territorial acquisition. Russia sold Alaska partly because they needed money after the Crimean War and feared they couldn't defend the territory against British expansion from Canada. The purchase required Senate approval and nearly failed due to opposition from congressmen who saw no value in acquiring Walrussia or Johnson's Polar Bear Garden. Alaska's eventual statehood in 1959 vindicated Seward's vision and made his critics look remarkably short-sighted about American territorial expansion. 77. The Year Without a Summer. 1816 became known as the Year Without a Summer when the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia caused global climate disruption that brought snow to New England in July. The volcanic eruption spewed so much ash and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere that it created a volcanic winter that lowered global temperatures and disrupted weather patterns worldwide. New England experienced killing frosts every month of the year, destroying crops and creating food shortages that forced many families to abandon their farms and migrate west. Snow fell in June across New York and New England, while temperatures dropped so low that lakes and rivers froze during summer months, creating apocalyptic conditions that seemed to defy natural law. The climate disruption contributed to westward migration as failed harvests forced farmers to seek new opportunities in territories that hadn't been affected by the volcanic winter. The year without summer demonstrated how volcanic eruptions on the other side of the world could affect American agriculture and daily life through atmospheric circulation patterns. The crisis also sparked innovation in farming techniques and crop selection as farmers learned to adapt to unpredictable weather patterns and shorter growing seasons. The 1816 climate disaster helped inspire Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein during a gloomy summer spent indoors in Switzerland, proving that even natural disasters can have unexpected cultural consequences. The year without summer remains a reminder of how natural events beyond human control can dramatically alter society and force adaptation to environmental changes. 78. America's oldest mummy. The Spirit Cave mummy from Nevada dates to approximately 9,400 years ago, making it significantly older than Egyptian mummies and one of the oldest naturally preserved human remains in North America. The mummy was discovered in a cave in the Nevada desert, where the dry climate and stable temperature created perfect preservation conditions that maintained soft tissue and clothing for nearly 10,000 years. The ancient individual was wrapped in tule reed mats and rabbit skin blankets, providing insights into prehistoric textile production and burial practices in ancient America. Scientific analysis revealed details about diet, health, and lifestyle of prehistoric Great Basin inhabitants, demonstrating sophisticated survival strategies in harsh desert environments. The mummy's preservation allowed researchers to study ancient DNA and determine genetic relationships between prehistoric populations and modern Native American tribes. The discovery sparked legal and ethical debates about the study of ancient human remains and the rights of Native American tribes to control research on their ancestral remains. The Spirit Cave mummy predates agriculture in North America, representing hunter-gatherer societies that thrived in desert environments using technologies adapted to arid conditions. The preservation quality rivals that of Egyptian mummies despite occurring naturally without artificial mummification techniques, demonstrating how environmental conditions can achieve remarkable preservation. The mummy provides a direct link to America's ancient past, offering tangible evidence of human adaptation and survival in challenging environments thousands of years before recorded history. 79. The Lost Colony Mystery. The 1590 disappearance of the Roanoke colony remains one of America's most enduring historical mysteries, with 115 English colonists vanishing without explanation except for the word Croton carved on a post. The colony was established in 1587 under John White's leadership, but when supply ships returned 3 years later, they found only empty buildings and cryptic messages carved into wood. The word Croton referred to a nearby island and friendly Native American tribe, suggesting the colonists may have relocated voluntarily rather than meeting a violent end. Archaeological investigations have found some artifacts that may be connected to the lost colonists, but no definitive evidence of their fate or final destination has ever been discovered. Theories about the colony's disappearance range from integration with Native American tribes to relocation to other areas, Spanish attack, disease, or starvation during harsh winters. The mystery has inspired countless books, documentaries, and investigations, making the Lost Colony one of America's most famous unsolved historical puzzles. The disappearance occurred during the earliest phase of English colonization, when communication with Europe was sporadic and survival in North America remained precarious. Recent DNA studies of regional Native American populations have suggested possible genetic connections to European ancestry, though results remain inconclusive and controversial. The Lost Colony represents the vulnerability of early American settlements and the gaps in historical knowledge that leave room for speculation and ongoing investigation. 80. Crater Lake's volcanic birth. Crater Lake in Oregon reaches 1,943 feet deep, making it the deepest lake in the United States and one of the deepest in the world, formed by the collapse of an ancient volcano called Mount Mazama. The lake formed approximately 7,700 years ago when Mount Mazama erupted with such violence that the volcano collapsed into its own magma chamber, creating a massive caldera that eventually filled with water. The eruption was so powerful that it deposited ash across 8 states and 3 Canadian provinces, demonstrating the incredible force of Cascade Range volcanic activity. Crater Lake's exceptional depth and pure water create the intense blue color that makes it one of America's most visually striking natural features. The lake has no inlet or outlet streams, receiving water only from precipitation and losing it only through evaporation and seepage, creating a closed hydrological system. Wizard Island, a small volcanic cone that rises from the lake, formed after the caldera collapse, demonstrating continued volcanic activity within a collapsed mountain. The lake's water is among the purest in North America, with visibility extending to depths of over 100 feet due to the absence of sediment input from streams. Native American tribes consider Crater Lake sacred and have oral traditions describing the volcanic eruption that created the caldera, providing cultural memory of the geological event. Crater Lake represents one of the most dramatic examples of volcanic landscape formation in North America, where destructive geological forces created lasting natural beauty. 81. The Liberty Bells Crack Mystery. The Liberty Bells' famous crack likely occurred in the 1840s during routine ringing, not during the Revolutionary War, as commonly believed, making the crack a 19th century development rather than a symbol of colonial rebellion. The bell was cast in 1752 and cracked almost immediately, requiring recasting by local Philadelphia foundry workers who added extra copper to strengthen the metal. The second bell served successfully for decades, ringing for various celebrations and public events throughout the Revolutionary War and early American period without developing the famous crack. The crack that visitors see today probably developed gradually through repeated use and metal fatigue, with the final damage occurring when the bell was rung for George Washington's birthday in 1846. Bell experts believe the crack resulted from a combination of poor metal composition, temperature changes, and the stress of repeated ringing over nearly a century of use. The Liberty Bells association with the Declaration of Independence was largely created by 19th century writers who romanticized the bell's role in revolutionary events. The bell's actual history is less dramatic than its mythological significance, though it remains an important symbol of American independence and freedom. The crack has been stabilized to prevent further damage, and the bell no longer rings, preserving it as a historical artifact rather than a functional musical instrument. The Liberty Bell demonstrates how historical objects can acquire symbolic meaning that transcends their actual historical role, becoming more important as symbols than as functional items. 82. Hawaii's spam obsession. Hawaii consumes approximately 7 million cans of spam annually, averaging about 5.1 cans per person per year, making it the state with the highest per capita spam consumption in America. The canned meat became popular in Hawaii during World War II when military rationing made spam a common protein source, and the habit continued long after the war ended. Hawaiian cuisine has incorporated spam into traditional dishes, creating unique fusion foods like spam musubi, loco moco with spam, and spam fried rice that blend American processed food with Asian cooking techniques. Local grocery stores in Hawaii dedicate entire aisles to spam varieties, offering flavors and preparations not available anywhere else in the United States. The spam consumption reflects Hawaii's multicultural population and history as a military outpost where processed foods became integrated with local culinary traditions. McDonald's restaurants in Hawaii serve spam, eggs, and rice for breakfast, creating menu items specifically designed for local taste that would seem bizarre to mainland customers. Hawaii's Spam enthusiasm has created a cultural identity around the processed meat that extends far beyond simple food consumption into art, festivals, and local pride. The state's Spam consumption demonstrates how wartime necessity can become permanent cultural preference, creating lasting changes in regional food culture that persist for generations. Hawaii's relationship with Spam proves that sometimes the most unlikely foods can become integral parts of local identity when historical circumstances create the right conditions for adoption. 83. The Curse of Tippecanoe. From 1840 to 1960, every president elected in a year ending in 0 died in office, creating what became known as the Curse of Tippecanoe, or the 20-year presidential curse. The pattern began with William Henry Harrison, elected 1840, who died of pneumonia just 31 days into his presidency, followed by Lincoln, 1860, assassinated, Garfield, 1880, assassinated, McKinley, 1900, assassinated, Harding, 1920, died of illness, and Kennedy, 1960, assassinated. The curse was named after the Battle of Tippecanoe, where Harrison defeated Tecumseh's brother in 1811, supposedly earning a curse from the Shawnee leader Tecumseh that would kill every great chief elected every 20 years. Ronald Reagan, elected 1980, survived an assassination attempt, breaking the pattern and supposedly ending the curse through modern medical care that saved his life after being shot. The 120-year pattern was statistically remarkable, with only a 1 in 500,000 chance of occurring randomly, making it one of the most unusual coincidences in American political history. The curse became part of American folklore and political superstition, with some candidates and voters genuinely concerned about the pattern's continuation. George W. Bush, elected 2000, and Joe Biden, elected 2020, have both served without dying in office, suggesting the curse has indeed been broken. The Tippecanoe curse represents how humans find patterns in random events and create supernatural explanations for statistical coincidences that seem too remarkable to be chance. The curse is apparent and demonstrates how medical advances can alter historical patterns and change outcomes that might have been inevitable in earlier eras. 84. America's oldest continuous business. Shirley Plantation in Virginia has operated continuously since 1613, making it America's oldest business in continuous operation and a survivor of over 400 years of historical change. The plantation has remained in the same family for 11 generations, adapting to colonial rule, revolution, Civil War, Reconstruction, and modern economic changes while maintaining agricultural operations. The business survived the Revolutionary War, Civil War, Great Depression, and 2 world wars, demonstrating remarkable adaptability and management continuity across centuries. Shirley Plantation represents the evolution of American agriculture from colonial tobacco farming to modern diversified operations, including tourism, events, and historical education. The plantation's longevity reflects Virginia's role in early American settlement and the ability of family businesses to adapt to changing economic conditions while preserving historical continuity. The business has witnessed the entire span of American history from colonial settlement to modern times, providing unique insights into economic and social changes over 4 centuries. Shirley Plantation's survival required constant adaptation of business models, from slave-based agriculture to modern tourism and event hosting, while maintaining historical authenticity. The plantation's continuous operation makes it a living link to America's colonial past and a testament to business adaptability and family stewardship across multiple generations. The longevity of Shirley Plantation demonstrates how traditional businesses can survive by embracing change while preserving historical identity and leveraging heritage as economic value. 85. The Gold Rush Environmental Legacy. California's gold rush moved approximately 1.5 billion cubic yards of material through hydraulic mining, creating environmental damage so extensive it remains visible from space today. Hydraulic mining used high-pressure water cannons to blast away entire hillsides, washing gold-bearing gravel through massive sluices while destroying forests, streams, and agricultural land. The mining debris clogged rivers and bays throughout Northern California, raising riverbeds and causing flooding that destroyed farmland hundreds of miles from mining sites. Sacramento Valley farmers eventually won court battles to stop hydraulic mining, but the environmental damage had already transformed California's landscape permanently. The debris from hydraulic mining created new landforms, altered river channels, and deposited sediment that changed the ecology of San Francisco Bay and Central Valley watersheds. Modern satellite imagery clearly shows the scale of gold rush mining operations, with scarred hillsides and altered waterways still visible more than 150 years after the mining ended. The gold rush environmental impact demonstrates how 19th-century industrial activities could cause landscape changes comparable to modern large-scale mining operations. The California gold mining legacy influenced environmental law and mining regulation, leading to legal precedents that balanced economic development with environmental protection. The visible environmental scars serve as a permanent reminder of how resource extraction can create lasting changes that affect ecosystems and human communities for generations. 86. The baseball origin myth. The Baseball Hall of Fame's claim that Abner Doubleday invented baseball in Cooperstown, New York, in 1839 was created for patriotic reasons rather than historical accuracy, giving America a purely domestic origin story for its national pastime. The Doubleday myth was promoted by Albert Spalding's Commission in 1907, which wanted to establish baseball as a uniquely American sport rather than acknowledging its evolution from British games like rounders and cricket. Doubleday was a Civil War general who never claimed to have invented baseball and was actually at West Point in 1839, making it impossible for him to have been in Cooperstown creating the sport. Baseball actually evolved gradually from various bat and ball games played in America and Britain, with rules developing organically through informal games rather than being invented by a single person. The Cooperstown location was chosen partly because it was a quaint, all-American town that fit the desired image of baseball's birthplace, regardless of historical evidence. The myth became so entrenched in American culture that correcting it proved nearly impossible, even when historians presented clear evidence of baseball's more complex origins. The Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown continues to benefit from the origin myth, attracting millions of visitors who want to see the birthplace of America's national pastime. The Doubleday story demonstrates how patriotic desires can override historical accuracy when creating national mythology around cultural institutions. The persistence of the baseball origin myth shows how appealing stories can become more powerful than historical truth in shaping public understanding of cultural heritage. 87. America's most isolated post office. Supai, Arizona, operates the most isolated post office in the United States, receiving mail delivery by mule train 8 miles into the Grand Canyon with no road access. The Havasupai tribal community of about 200 people relies entirely on pack mules to transport mail, supplies, and equipment from the rim of the Grand Canyon to their remote village. Mail delivery occurs several times per week year-round, with mules carrying postal bags along ancient trails that require several hours of hiking through rugged canyon terrain. The post office serves not only the tribal community, but also tourists visiting Havasu Falls, one of the most spectacular and isolated waterfalls in North America. Emergency evacuations from Supai require helicopter transport, making it one of the few places in America where medical emergencies must be handled by air rather than ground transportation. The mule train mail delivery represents one of the last examples of 19th century postal methods still operating in modern America, preserving historical transportation practices by necessity. The isolation of Supai has helped preserve Havasupai culture and traditional ways of life, though it also creates challenges for modern communication and emergency services. The post office operation requires careful coordination between tribal authorities, the U.S. Postal Service, and mule packers who understand the challenging terrain and logistics. Supai's mail delivery demonstrates how geography can create unique solutions that blend modern postal service with traditional transportation methods that remain practical in extreme terrain. 88. The Pentagon's segregation architecture. The Pentagon was built with twice as many bathrooms as structurally necessary because Virginia's segregation laws in 1941 required separate facilities for white and black workers during construction. The building's architects planned for racial segregation by duplicating restroom facilities throughout the massive structure, even though the federal government intended to integrate the building after completion. The extra bathrooms were built into the design rather than added later, creating permanent architectural evidence of segregation policies that influence federal building construction. When the Pentagon opened, the federal government decided not to enforce segregation, making many of the duplicate bathrooms unnecessary from the beginning of operations. The segregation architecture created a building with more restroom capacity per person than almost any other structure in America, solving bathroom availability problems through discriminatory planning. The Pentagon's design reflects how state laws could influence federal construction projects, even when those laws conflicted with intended federal policies and values. The extra bathrooms remain in use today, serving a practical purpose that outlasted the discriminatory policies that required their construction. The Pentagon's segregation architecture serves as a physical reminder of how racism influenced even basic building design and infrastructure planning in mid-20th century America. The building demonstrates how discriminatory policies can create lasting physical changes that persist long after the policies themselves have been abandoned and condemned. 89. Rhode Island's identity crisis. Rhode Island's official name was Rhode Island and Providence Plantations until 2020, making it the longest state name in America and creating confusion about the state's actual geography. The name reflected the merger of two separate colonial entities, the island-based settlements around Newport and the mainland Providence Plantations around Providence City. Most of Rhode Island's population and territory is actually on the mainland, with the island portion representing only a small fraction of the state's geography and residents. The word plantations referred to colonial settlements rather than agricultural estates, but became controversial due to associations with slavery and southern plantation agriculture. Rhode Island voters approved changing the name to simply Rhode Island in 2020, removing Providence Plantations due to slavery concerns and historical sensitivity. The name change eliminated America's longest state name and resolved decades of debate about whether the colonial terminology was appropriate for modern use. Rhode Island's name confusion extended to practical problems, with many Americans unsure whether the state was primarily an island or mainland territory. The original name reflected 17th century colonial naming conventions that described political and geographical relationships differently than modern state boundaries. The name change demonstrates how historical terminology can become problematic over time, requiring updates to reflect contemporary values and understanding of historical context. 90. Delaware's corporate empire. Delaware has over 1 million corporations incorporated within its borders, significantly exceeding the state's population of about 990,000 people, making it home to more businesses than residents. Over 66% of Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in Delaware, along with more than 50% of all publicly traded companies in America, creating a massive corporate presence in the nation's second smallest state. Delaware's corporate dominance results from business-friendly laws, specialized courts for corporate disputes, and a legal system designed to attract business and corporation regardless of where companies actually operate. The state generates significant revenue from incorporation fees and franchise taxes, making corporate law a major industry that supports Delaware's economy and state budget. Delaware's Court of Chancery specializes in business disputes and corporate governance, creating legal expertise that attracts companies seeking predictable and sophisticated business law. Many major corporations have Delaware mailing addresses, but no actual business operations in the state, existing only on paper for legal and tax purposes. The concentration of corporate entities makes Delaware a powerful influence on American business law and corporate governance, despite its small size and population. Delaware's corporate laws are frequently copied by other states, making it a laboratory for business legislation that affects companies nationwide. The state's business focus demonstrates how specialized legal frameworks can create economic advantages that attract industries far beyond traditional geographical factors. 91. The Statue of Liberty's color change. The Statue of Liberty was originally copper brown when dedicated in 1886, but turned green over approximately 30 years due to oxidation processes that created the distinctive patina Americans recognize today. The copper oxidation process created a protective layer of verdigris that actually preserves the underlying metal while dramatically changing the statue's appearance from brown to green. Early photographs show the statue in its original copper color, looking dramatically different from the iconic green appearance that became associated with American freedom and immigration. The color change was gradual, occurring over decades as copper reacted with oxygen, salt air, and atmospheric moisture to create the chemical compounds that produce the green patina. The oxidation process was complete by about 1916, meaning the statue has been green longer than it was brown, making the green color more historically significant than the original copper appearance. French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi probably anticipated the color change, as copper oxidation was well understood in the 19th century and many European copper structures had already turned green. The green patina actually protects the copper from further corrosion, making the color change beneficial for long-term preservation rather than a sign of deterioration. Modern restoration efforts preserve the green patina while maintaining the statue's structural integrity, recognizing that the oxidized color has become essential to the statue's identity. The color transformation demonstrates how natural processes can change iconic symbols over time, creating new visual identities that become more recognizable than original appearances. 92. America's tornado dominance. The United States experiences approximately 1,000 to 1,200 tornadoes annually, more than the rest of the world combined, due to unique geographical conditions that create ideal tornado formation environments. America's Great Plains region, known as Tornado Alley, provides perfect conditions for tornado development through the collision of different air masses across flat terrain with minimal geographical barriers. Cold, dry air from Canada meets warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico across the flat Great Plains, creating the atmospheric instability that spawns supercell thunderstorms and tornadoes. The lack of mountain ranges in the central United States allows air masses to travel long distances without disruption, maintaining their distinct characteristics until they collide and create severe weather. Argentina experiences the second most tornadoes globally, but still sees only about 10% of America's annual tornado activity, demonstrating how unique America's geographical conditions really are. Oklahoma and Kansas average the most tornadoes per square mile, with some areas experiencing tornadoes almost annually during peak spring season. Modern Doppler radar and storm chasing have made tornado research a distinctly American science, with most global tornado knowledge coming from studies conducted in the American Midwest. The concentration of tornado activity has created specialized American industries, including storm chasing tourism, severe weather research, and tornado shelter construction. America's tornado frequency represents a unique natural phenomenon that affects millions of people and requires specialized architecture, emergency planning, and meteorological services found nowhere else on Earth. 93. San Francisco's movable houses. San Francisco's Victorian houses were relocated multiple times after the 1906 earthquake, with some houses literally picked up and moved to different lots as the city rebuilt and rezoned neighborhoods. The earthquake and subsequent fires destroyed most of San Francisco, but many houses that survived were moved to new locations to accommodate changed street layouts and urban planning priorities. Moving entire houses required specialized equipment and techniques that turned relocation into a common practice rather than an unusual event, with some houses moved several times over decades. The house-moving industry became so established in San Francisco that companies specialized in relocating buildings across the hilly terrain using horse-drawn equipment and later motorized machinery. Some Victorian houses were moved miles from their original locations, crossing multiple neighborhoods to reach new lots that met changing zoning requirements and property values. The practice continued well into the 20th century as San Francisco's development patterns evolved, with houses moved to accommodate new construction, street widening, and neighborhood redevelopment. San Francisco's house-moving culture created a unique approach to historic preservation through relocation rather than demolition, saving architectural heritage while allowing urban development. The movable houses demonstrate how catastrophic events can create opportunities for urban experimentation and flexibility in city planning that wouldn't be possible under normal circumstances. The practice of moving entire buildings reflects San Francisco's pragmatic approach to balancing historic preservation with urban growth in a geographically constrained city. 94. America's newest national park. New River Gorge in West Virginia became America's newest national park in 2020, transforming from a national river to full national park status and adding 70,000 acres to the national park system. The designation recognized New River Gorge's unique combination of natural beauty, recreational opportunities, and cultural history related to coal mining and Appalachian heritage. The park protects one of the oldest rivers in North America, which flows northward through dramatic sandstone cliffs and creates world-class whitewater rafting and rock climbing opportunities. New River Gorge Bridge, one of the longest steel arch bridges in the world, spans the gorge and hosts an annual Bridge Day Festival where base jumpers legally leap from the 876-foot high structure. The park designation brought increased federal funding and protection to an area that had been threatened by coal mining, mountaintop removal, and industrial development. The new national park status reflects growing recognition of Appalachian landscapes and culture as worthy of preservation alongside more famous Western parks. The park's recreational activities include some of the best rock climbing in the eastern United States, with over 1,400 established climbing routes on high-quality sandstone cliffs. New River Gorge represents a shift in national park philosophy toward protecting landscapes that combine natural features with human history rather than preserving only pristine wilderness areas. The park's designation demonstrates how former industrial areas can be transformed into recreational and conservation resources that serve both environmental and economic development goals. 95. The Cahokia Mystery. Cahokia, a pre-Columbian city near present-day St. Louis, had approximately 20,000 residents in 1100 AD, making it larger than London at the time, then mysteriously vanished by 1400 AD. The city featured massive earthen mounds, sophisticated urban planning, and trade networks that extended across North America, demonstrating advanced Native American civilization centuries before European contact. Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas, rises 100 feet high and covers 14 acres at its base, requiring millions of basket loads of earth to construct. Archaeological evidence suggests Cahokia was a major religious, political, and economic center that influenced cultures across the Midwest and Southeast through trade and cultural exchange. The city's disappearance remains unexplained, with theories ranging from climate change and resource depletion to political collapse and warfare, but no definitive archaeological evidence. Cahokia's population peak made it the largest city north of Mexico before European colonization, challenging common assumptions about pre-Columbian North American civilization and urbanization. The site's preservation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site recognizes its global significance, though urban development has destroyed many outlying mounds and archaeological features. Cahokia demonstrates that sophisticated urban civilizations existed in North America long before European contact, with social organization and construction capabilities that rivaled contemporary European cities. The mystery of Cahokia's abandonment highlights how much remains unknown about pre-Columbian American history and the complex societies that existed before written records. 96. The Pentagon's Corridor Maze. The Pentagon contains 17.5 miles of corridors and 150 stairways, making it one of the largest office buildings in the world and a potential maze for visitors unfamiliar with its layout. Despite its enormous size, the Pentagon was designed so that any location can be reached from any other location in less than 7 minutes of walking, demonstrating efficient architectural planning. The building houses approximately 26,000 employees, making it a small city that requires its own infrastructure, including restaurants, shops, medical facilities, and transportation systems. The Pentagon's five-sided design creates a unique architectural challenge where traditional rectangular building navigation doesn't apply, requiring specialized wayfinding systems and employee orientation. The building contains 691,000 square feet of office space, making it larger than many downtown business districts but concentrated in a single structure. The Pentagon's construction during World War II required innovative building techniques and materials conservation, creating a structure designed for efficiency rather than architectural beauty. The building's security requirements create additional complexity, with multiple checkpoints, restricted areas, and classified zones that affect normal pedestrian traffic flow. The Pentagon represents a unique type of government architecture designed for maximum efficiency and security rather than public access or aesthetic appeal. The building's scale and complexity make it a functioning city within a building, requiring specialized management systems that don't exist in typical office environments. 97. Coca-Cola's Secret Vault. The Coca-Cola Secret Formula is kept in a high-security vault at the World of Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, maintaining the mystery of one of America's most famous trade secrets. The formula, known as Merchandise 7X, has been one of the world's most closely guarded commercial secrets since the 1880s, with access limited to a select few company executives. The recipe supposedly contains natural flavors from around the world, but the exact ingredients and proportions remain unknown outside of a small circle of Coca-Cola employees. The secrecy surrounding the formula has become a marketing tool that generates more value than the actual recipe, creating mystique around an otherwise simple soft drink product. Coca-Cola has successfully maintained formula secrecy for over 130 years, demonstrating how trade secrets can be protected longer than patents while providing competitive advantages. The vault display at the World of Coca-Cola allows visitors to get close to the secret without revealing it, creating tourist attraction value from commercial secrecy. Several attempts to reverse engineer the formula have produced similar tasting products, but Coca-Cola's brand power makes the exact recipe less important than marketing and distribution. The formula secrecy represents one of the most successful examples of trade secret protection in business history, creating lasting competitive advantage through information control. The vault and secrecy surrounding Coca-Cola's formula demonstrate how mystery and exclusivity can enhance product value beyond the actual physical ingredients or manufacturing process. 98. Mount Washington's wind record. Mount Washington in New Hampshire recorded the highest surface wind speed ever measured by humans, 231 miles per hour, on April 12, 1934, a record that has never been exceeded at a land-based weather station. The wind measurement was taken by weather observers who remained at their mountaintop station during an extreme storm that produced hurricane-force winds far from any ocean. Mount Washington's elevation and geographical position create unique conditions where different weather systems collide and create extremely violent winds that exceed typical hurricane intensities. The weather station on Mount Washington operates year-round despite some of the harshest conditions on Earth, with observers enduring extreme cold, ice, and winds that can knock people off their feet. The 231 miles per hour wind speed exceeds the strongest hurricane winds ever recorded, making Mount Washington more dangerous than most tropical storms despite being located in New Hampshire. The mountain's weather extremes have made it a valuable research location for understanding severe weather, with conditions that can simulate Arctic and alpine environments. Mount Washington's wind record demonstrates how geographical features can create weather extremes that exceed typical storm systems through orographic effects and altitude exposure. The weather station's continuous operation since 1932 has provided valuable long-term weather data that helps scientists understand climate patterns and extreme weather events. Mount Washington proves that some of America's most extreme weather occurs in unexpected locations rather than traditional severe weather zones like the Great Plains or Gulf Coast. 99. The Gateway Arch's flexibility. St. Louis's Gateway Arch sways up to 18 inches in 50 miles per hour winds, demonstrating the engineering flexibility required for tall, narrow structures to survive extreme weather conditions. The arch was designed to flex rather than resist wind forces, using engineering principles that allow controlled movement to prevent structural failure during storms. Visitors can sometimes feel the arch moving during windy conditions, creating a disconcerting experience for people expecting a completely stable structure. The arch's stainless steel construction and catenary curve design distribute wind loads evenly, allowing flexibility while maintaining structural integrity under extreme conditions. The 630-foot height and narrow profile make the arch particularly susceptible to wind forces, requiring engineering solutions that balance stability with necessary movement. The arch's movement is carefully monitored and calculated to ensure that swaying remains within safe limits, even during the most severe weather events. The engineering challenge of building a flexible monument required innovative solutions that influenced later tall building construction and wind resistance design. The arch's ability to sway safely demonstrates how modern engineering can create structures that work with natural forces rather than simply resisting them. The Gateway Arch represents a unique engineering achievement that combines monumental architecture with practical solutions for extreme weather survival in the Midwest. 100. The Pony Express's brief glory. The Pony Express operated for only 18 months from April 1860 to October 1861, making it one of the shortest-lived but most famous transportation systems in American history. The service used a relay system of riders and horses to carry mail across 1,966 miles from Missouri to California in just 10 days, cutting weeks off traditional mail delivery times. The Pony Express employed about 80 riders, 400 to 500 horses, and 190 stations across the American West, creating a complex logistics operation that required precise timing and coordination. The service ended when the Transcontinental Telegraph was completed, making the Pony Express instantly obsolete and demonstrating how new technology can eliminate entire industries overnight. Despite its brief operation, the Pony Express became a symbol of American frontier spirit, adventure, and a willingness to take extreme risks for communication and connection. The riders faced constant dangers including hostile weather, difficult terrain, and potential conflicts with Native American tribes, making it one of the most hazardous jobs in America. The Pony Express lost money throughout its operation, demonstrating that technological innovation doesn't always guarantee financial success even when providing valuable services. The service's mythology far exceeds its actual historical impact, becoming more famous in American folklore than many longer-lasting and more economically significant transportation systems. The Pony Express represents the American tendency to romanticize brief, dramatic episodes over sustained, practical achievements in transportation and communication history. 101. The world's largest indoor rainforest. The Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska, houses the world's largest indoor rainforest under a single roof, covering 1.5 acres under glass and creating a complete tropical ecosystem in the Great Plains. The Lye Jungle contains over 90 species of animals and hundreds of plant species, creating a self-sustaining tropical environment that requires no heating during Nebraska winters. The indoor rainforest maintains year-round temperatures between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit with 80% humidity, providing tropical conditions that contrast dramatically with Nebraska's continental climate. The facility includes a 70-foot-tall canopy walkway that allows visitors to experience rainforest layers from floor to ceiling, providing educational opportunities about tropical ecosystem structure. The indoor rainforest uses innovative climate control systems that recycle water and maintain atmospheric conditions without external heating during cold Great Plains winters. The jungle houses endangered species from around the world, providing conservation breeding programs and research opportunities that wouldn't be possible in natural outdoor environments. The facility demonstrates how modern technology can create authentic natural environments in locations where they couldn't naturally exist, expanding zoo capabilities beyond geographical limitations. The indoor rainforest attracts millions of visitors to Nebraska, proving that innovative attractions can draw tourism to unexpected locations through unique experiences. The Lied Jungle represents the intersection of conservation, education, and entertainment, creating valuable wildlife habitat while providing public education about tropical ecosystems. 102. Kansas's Twine Ball Monument. Kansas is home to the world's largest ball of twine, located in Cawker City, weighing over 17,000 pounds and measuring 40 feet in circumference after decades of continuous additions. The twine ball was started by Frank Stober in 1953 and has grown through community contributions, annual festivals, and tourist additions that make it a continuously expanding monument. The ball requires a special shelter to protect it from weather while allowing public access for viewing and photographing, making it one of Kansas's most unusual tourist attractions. Annual twine-adding festivals bring visitors from around the world to contribute to the ball's growth, creating a unique form of participatory public art that spans generations. The twine ball has inspired similar projects in other states, but Cawker City's ball maintains its status through careful measurement and documentation of its growth over time. The monument represents small-town America's ability to create tourist attractions through persistence, community involvement, and willingness to embrace eccentric projects. The twine ball demonstrates how simple materials and sustained effort can create landmarks that attract international attention and become sources of local pride. The ongoing growth of the ball means it's never finished, making it a living monument that changes each year rather than a static historical artifact. The world's largest twine ball proves that sometimes the most memorable attractions are those that celebrate human persistence and community spirit rather than natural wonders or historical significance. 103. America's coffee growing exclusivity. Hawaii and California are the only two states that commercially grow coffee, making America almost entirely dependent on coffee imports despite consuming more coffee than any other nation. Hawaii's volcanic soil and tropical climate create ideal conditions for coffee production, with Kona Coffee achieving international recognition for quality and commanding premium prices. California's coffee production is concentrated in limited areas with Mediterranean climates, primarily in Santa Barbara and San Diego counties where microclimates support small-scale coffee farming. The climate requirements for coffee production limit American growing regions to areas with specific temperature, rainfall, and soil conditions that exist naturally in only a few locations. America imports over 90% of its coffee consumption from tropical countries, making coffee one of the largest agricultural imports and creating dependence on international markets. The limited domestic coffee production demonstrates how agricultural geography restricts crop possibilities even in a country with diverse climates and extensive farmland. Hawaiian coffee production faces competition from lower-cost international producers, requiring premium marketing and quality differentiation to remain economically viable. California's emerging coffee industry represents attempts to reduce import dependence through agricultural innovation and adaptation of farming techniques to marginal climates. America's coffee growing limitations highlight the relationship between climate, agriculture, and international trade in meeting domestic consumption demands for tropical products.